convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
Seductive. Quite sure he's right. An obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
All right, it is Monday, January 27th, 2025, the 8th day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Oh, let's be reasonable. All right, so we're going to... I want to do one thing, and then we're going to get to some of the stuff we missed at the end of last week. I cannot believe how much stuff is happening. It's honestly so great to watch. There's incredible stuff to talk about every single day. Tons of signal. The noise has been reduced, it seems, to virtually nothing, which is awesome because there's way less bullshit to wade through. And wading through bullshit is what makes doing this sometimes so frustrating. So when we can just get right down to the brass tacks, to the nitty gritty, oh gosh, that's where we find our happiness. Okay, I want to start out right here. We went through this for a few minutes on Devolution Power Hour on Saturday night, and that was fun. But someone in my chat sent me this on Saturday, and I want to spend some additional time on it and definitely put it on the record of this show. So this is the comedian Whitney Cummings. Now, Whitney Cummings has been a comedian in Los Angeles for a really long time, has a fairly big podcast. She's a very successful professional comedian, especially for a woman, because there's not that many hugely successful female professional comics. And of course, there was a huge effort to create more of them from nothing, kind of at the end of that Obama era, leading through the Me Too era. And there's still some of it today. And Whitney rode that wave. She was extremely woke. And now she's our new leader through red pilling. She's one of the new shepherds the regime has chosen for the newly awakening that we need to put back to sleep. And so she was on CNN's New Year's Eve coverage with Anderson Cooper and that other guy who, like Anderson Cooper, is very gay. So they did the New Year's thing together, and Whitney was doing jokes that were based in red pilled, but from like 2021. Like they're like 4-year-old, 5-year-old jokes. That's where her audience and CNN's audience have caught up to on an informational timeline. They're just starting to realize, oh, maybe something was wrong with that whole COVID thing. Maybe we don't have this enormous majority where Joe Biden received 81 million real lawful American votes. Maybe they've been lying to us. So Whitney is very based, very red-pilled now. And she has this thing where during her comedy routines, she has people in the crowd like trying to red pill her. That's like part of her new act. Red pill me, everybody. I would never have allowed this 6 years ago, but now I do because I'm the new character, the new red pilled lady who's also totally funny and cares as much about Instagram as all of you. Here we go.
Who do you think did 9/11?
Us.
So why did America do it?
To finish Bush 1 shot.
Where'd you read this? Where's
I started 11 years ago.
Where in the military were you?
Syria.
Yeah, I want the full conspiracy. Let's go.
I was at the VA a year and a half after an operation that we went to. Breaking news, the operation that we did a year and a half ago popped up on the news. I immediately went to go check, and I'm like, is this modern? And they said, yes. And I said, no, it's not. I need to go talk to mental health because I was there when that happened.
Oh, so you go and say like, what's on the news isn't true.
Yes.
Am I going crazy?
Yeah, and it broke my whole reality.
All right. And so then she gets into some nonsense to distract from that point, talking about the lost city of Atlantis. And I'm not fronting on those lost city of Atlantis believers. Maybe it's totally real. I don't know. Okay. No comments about that. I just don't want to distract from the point that was just made. So this guy says that he used to serve in Syria in the military and that he watched on the news as breaking news. Check out this op from Syria that he knew was from a year and a half ago because he was in the op and it was being presented as happening in real time by the news. And he says that broke his whole reality. Now, this is certainly evidence of what I talk about when I talk about informational timelines and informational time travel. This is an element of fake news that I think people don't really pay any attention to. Like they know that they can be told the wrong facts about a news story, and they know that they can have the meaning about a correct set of facts distorted for them by the way the facts are expressed, right? You connect dots in a certain way. Another person might connect dots in a different way. You can take the same set of facts, generally speaking, and create two entirely different stories. One of them might map onto reality for some people. One of them might not. One interpretation of a set of facts might map onto reality for almost everybody. That still wouldn't mean that it was true unless it was the best explanation that was able to map onto reality prime. Something mapping into the false reality can simply be done at any moment by adjusting the story about what makes up that false reality. So you can distort with facts, the claims, the individual details of a story, the who, what, when, where, why, who, what, when, where, and how. The why, of course, the meaning can be distorted separately from the facts. No matter what the facts are, the meaning can be distorted. But the when, people don't really think that that's distorted. It gets reported to them in real time. They assume it's happening in real time, that they're getting the truth about the when. Oh, this is happening now. Because everything, as you find out about it, always feels like it's happening in real time relative to yourself, unless it's explained by people. This is happening at some point in history. Oh, this thing happened in World War II. Okay, well, you don't understand. You immediately understand that's not happening now. Breaking news is meant to be happening now in real time. And if you're being shown breaking news as though it's happening now, but it came from a year and a half ago, that is a major distortion in the news. That is fake news of a kind people are not accustomed to. And this is something that I've been talking about for a few years because it was something that I believed I was witnessing and in some respect, intuiting. It has to be this way because of the ways they lie about certain things. And what I was observing was information entering our information streams, whether they're, from people who have done work in the truth community for decades, or whether it's from people doing Q research, where there's this new kind of information stream that is being started intentionally, and then it is kind of building organically from there and then flowing out into the public. You could watch information generate, I don't know if that's the right word, but be analyzed and then be passed on from those points in the information stream, which certainly isn't, the kind of feeding source of the information stream, but it's much closer than CNN would be, or that someone doing a podcast downstream from CNN would be. So you can see that information break into certain information streams. Let's say, right now, it's January of this new year. We can see new information bubble up, break into the information stream in parts of the truth community and Q community, devolution community, wherever it is, whoever's analyzing it. Could be coming directly down from Trump. Somebody's interpreting it the right way rather than the wrong way based on an entirely different body of knowledge than most people are working with. And new beliefs about the world arise, and then they're passed on. And then you can watch in a few months or weeks or a few months, or sometimes a couple of years, as those ideas are adopted into the central narrative. For the people who are totally addicted to the central narrative and are still paying attention, that's their primary source of information, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, CNN, Fox News, whatever it is. By the time it's fully into the mainstream, which comes usually a few weeks after the Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro's and all of them begin entering these ideas into the mainstream. At that point, when it enters into the mainstream and it gains wide public, if not acceptance, at least acknowledgement, you can measure the time between when that happened and when it entered an information stream much earlier, and know that the people who are just hearing about it for the first time in the mainstream are experiencing the information as breaking news, and it's being presented to them as breaking news. Breaking news. New evidence from Hunter Biden's laptop suggests that Joe Biden had shared an office space with a member of the Chinese Communist Party. Okay? That information was publicly known and accepted in 2020 or 2021, but many people just found out about it last year. And of course, it was on Hunter's laptop, which means that it was in someone's possession in the government in 2019. So that means it's, if we're talking last year, people who just found out for the first time, breaking news, this is true, that's 5 years delay. Okay. And certainly it happened years before that. So the real-time event, I can't remember that one exactly. I think it was probably, I don't know. Maybe I should I shouldn't look it up. Go to the report on the Biden laptop by Marco Polo. Let's just say, for the sake of example, that it was 2016. Okay. And I don't remember the date. That would be an 8-year difference. That would be an 8-year gap on an informational timeline between when that event happened in real time and when people understood it as breaking news to them happening in real time. That's how they interact with that information. They don't immediately understand that they could have known that information years before they did, and then interacted differently with that issue and every other issue that intersects that issue. Like if you had voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and then you found out later on that Joe Biden actually did have an office that his family shared with officials from the Chinese Communist Party, and they had all these dealings with the former mayor of Moscow's wife and the biolabs in Ukraine and all that. If you would have not voted for Joe Biden on that basis, well, then that informational gap of 8 years, on that gap on an informational timeline of 8 years, would have made you support Joe Biden in direct opposition to your own beliefs, morals, principles, desires, needs, all of it. Okay. So time can be absolutely distorted by the fake news. And right here, we have a totally obvious version of that happening. And this is probably like the quintessential version of something like this happening and being proven. Okay. I've suggested this for many years now about what's happening in Ukraine, about what's happening in Israel, about what's happening with the big tech platforms. Like, obviously, TikTok was dealt with by Donald Trump in 2020. And now we're being told the same story right now as if Congress did it 9 months ago. Well, that's not what happened. And they wanted to ban it the day before Trump got in office. Well, that didn't happen. And now Trump's extended that for 75 days. And we're going to see how that goes. He just talked last week to Larry Ellison of Oracle about all of that data. All of that data. And we're going to come back to the data subject later. But this is one of those distortions that you have to be cognizant of at all times. You can't just forget that this sort of thing happens. Like, what do you mean? You're saying there's no war in Ukraine? Well, there was a war in Ukraine. There definitely, I believe, was something that happened in Ukraine, but it probably happened as a direct result of the regime's overthrow of the Ukrainian government in 2014 in the Maidan revolution, the Maidan massacre. That was Ukraine's January 6th. Our January 6th is maybe better understood as Ukraine's Maidan incident, which is why Ukrainian intelligence was on the ground at January 6th. What they wanted was actual violence and actual killings so that it could all be extra levels of real. Unfortunately, they didn't get that. Unfortunately for them, of course, and our January 6th was just our Reichstag fire. This is an event the regime has used over and over again, a technique they've used over and over again for 100 years at least, and probably much longer than that. So at that point, we are told at least that there was an ethnic civil war in exactly the region of Ukraine that's been, quote unquote, fought over since 2022, 3 years now. And that ethnic civil war lasted for 8 years, at least, right? Or maybe not. But the globalist regime in Ukraine, with their Azov battalions, all of the CIA-trained units, were waging war on people of Slavic ethnicity in the Donbass. And there was a referendum in each one of those territories in 2022 that said all of those territories are now just Russia. Has the media ever told us that? When they had to confront the issue, they said that those elections don't count. Those aren't real elections. And so until they have real elections, it's just Ukraine. Well, Ukraine's elections got canceled. So what does it mean? Is Russia going to give back that land? No, of course not. The people of that land already voted to become part of Russia. And it's already Russia in terms of international law. But our media hasn't recognized it. And at some point, when the media does recognize it, they'll say Donald Trump gave half of Ukraine away to Vladimir Putin. And the funny thing on some level is that might be true, but it wasn't ours to give away to begin with. It only seemed like ours because the evil twin faction had seized it and controlled it for some period of time, with the U.S. military as the ultimate defenders of that status quo for the time it existed. So they just mess with people in time. We've talked about that with Israel and Palestine and the Abraham Accords and the rest of it. And the idea that these areas are essentially construction projects holds under those terms. And Donald Trump keeps calling them. Looks like they've all been demolished. They're demolition sites because something else is going to be built there. Ukraine, it's flat land. It's very, very flat land, he says over and over again. So things can simply be distorted in time by the news telling you that something is breaking news and then showing you footage or telling you stories about things that happened years ago. And if they're able to do that, then is it necessary that those things happened at all, at least the war aspects of them? What are they going to tell you if they're simply forced to relinquish lands? Are they going to tell you, oh yeah, the thing is, We were holding these lands illegitimately, and we paid off Egypt and Jordan to recognize Israel, for instance. But half the world's population, or a quarter, or whatever it is, 28 states in the world, don't recognize Israel as a state at all. Are they going to tell you that? So it turns out that fewer countries recognize Israel as a state now. Are they going to say that? I don't think they're going to say that. They're going to say that land is being seized in a war, and what we need to do is take military action to seize that land back. That's what they're doing in Ukraine. They'll do it in Guyana. They kind of hinted at it for a while with Hong Kong, but relinquished Hong Kong. And they've been hinting about it for a few years with Taiwan, and we'll see how all that goes down. We know how the Afghanistan withdrawal went. Is that because the Taliban was being violent? The Taliban ended the opium trade there that the U.S. military had guarded on behalf of the regime and Big Pharma for 20 years. So it's a matter of how these things are displayed and when they're displayed, when they are disclosed to the public. And the idea that they can disclose the reality of an op as though it's happening in real time, even though it happened a year and a half ago. That's a big one. And I think that the impact of that understanding needs to be applied broadly, because we cannot know how many times they've done this, how often they do this, and what sort of impact it has on the world. What kind of tension did it cause in your local community when we saw the Putin's very brutal invasion narrative on the news? All your neighbors, blue and yellow flags. I was making fun of some of my friends about the NFL today. And, I watch the NFL sometimes too as a guilty pleasure. And I know it is every single minute. And I'm just like, oh man, I just want to kind of venture back to this for a Sunday afternoon. And then when that's over, I'm immediately disappointed in myself. I'm like, oh, that's what it feels like to re-engage an addiction. Like just shame at the end. I just saw 15 pharma commercials. But it was a post of mine from 2022 on Telegram, or actually it was a post from Pepe Lives Matter that I had forwarded into my channel, about the NFL draft and the backdrop of the entire draft, this huge event that they're throwing with like 20,000 people watching live. It's just all Ukraine flags across this gigantic stage. Remember that? All that impact from something that we saw on television. Remember COVID? Remember seeing the videos of how people in China were dropping dead in the streets? How everybody was concerned that if you stood too close in the grocery store, you were going to kill someone's grandma. If you wore no mask or a bandana, you were going to kill someone's grandma. But if you wore a cloth mask over your face that everyone knew didn't work, then you weren't going to kill someone's grandma. Or if you did, which you weren't going to do because everybody knew that killing grandma was never going to happen. It was really about acknowledging, hey, I'm totally in agreement that no one should kill grandma. And if you didn't go along with the thing, well, then you were someone who wanted to kill everybody's grandma, and that makes you basically a Nazi. And then all your rights can be taken away. And if you've lost your career or your home or something like that, well, then it doesn't matter. And that's how 2020 worked out. If only we had known. If only we had known all the ways the news could simply deceive us and then cause catastrophic occurrences in the real world based on people's beliefs. That's what they're doing. And if they're going to show you a military op from a year and a half ago and tell you that it's happening in real time, and because of the belief that is spawned as a result of that story being told to the masses, collective action occurs next. And all of a sudden we find ourselves in some ridiculous war. And this has always, always, always worked for them in the past. And they've been doing it forever. So, hey, happy Monday, everybody. All right, let's jump into some of these cartel stories from last week in the New York Times, because I don't want to miss this. I think it's going to be really important. And it kind of is one of these things that we've been talking about and hinting at for quite a long time. Now we are seeing it take shape in the pages of the New York Times as a result of Donald Trump's presidential actions. We've talked for years about how the global regime is a vast criminal enterprise. It's like a mafia. And when the mafia gets more powerful and wants to continue taking more power and ultimately control everything, well, then they're going to figure out ways to infiltrate into various companies, corporations, various governments, local, state, national, global, academia, all our cultural institutions. Why wouldn't the mafia have control of people in all of those arenas? There are some people they control because they know that those people are corrupt, will take payoffs anytime. There are some of those people who have led compromising personal lives and gotten caught for it. And so now they're just fully under control, or else their reputations will be destroyed forever. And then there are some people who are just 100% loyal to the cause, and they're more than happy to commit crime on behalf of the mafia, knowing that no one's ever going to hold them accountable because they are protected within that mafia. That is how our world is run. And now it's becoming obvious and clear, including in the pages of the paper of record, The Old Gray Lady. This is from January 21st. So last Tuesday, following Trump's signing of these executive orders about recognizing the cartels as terrorist organizations, how Trump's plan to label some drug cartels terrorists would work. In the executive order he issued on Monday, Mr. Trump named two gangs in particular that operate inside the U.S., the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua and the El Salvadoran MS-13. Using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the government could take additional steps to disrupt the financial networks of the gangs. Okay, and let's think about these two. Okay, El Salvador is Nayib Bukele. Venezuela, well, that's Nicolas Maduro, and Nicolas Maduro is a very, very bad man. He is an authoritarian, totalitarian, communist dictator who stole an election from that nice old man and that very hip, middle-aged woman who he was Trojan horsing along into the presidency of Venezuela. He would have been the next Juan Guaido, or however long they kept him around, and then they would have moved Maria Corina Machado into his position like Venezuela's own Kamabla. But instead, Nicolas Maduro is in the way. Now, what did Nayib Bukele do with El Salvadoran gangs? Well, he rounded them all up and imprisoned them, or so the story goes. And so now he is a based and red-pilled hero appearing on Tucker Carlson, and Nicolas Maduro is going to be sent to Mars by Elon Musk after they have a boxing match. While MS-13 has been active in the country for decades, Tren de Aragua has had a growing presence in the country in recent years, coinciding with an influx of Venezuelans coming to the United States for refuge. Okay, well, what kind of Venezuelans are coming here? They say it's Venezuelan gangs. You gotta wonder if it's just members of the regime from Venezuela representing the opposition to Maduro, which is, again, just the regime. What is it going to look like when members of the American Uniparty begin fleeing? And you might say that sounds dramatic, but then again, last year, we had article after article after article after article about the members of the regime fleeing the country because they feared what would happen when Donald Trump took office. So if it can happen here and people would flee because the authoritarian dictator Donald Trump has taken office, why should we think something different is going on in Venezuela? And we're like, well, there are poor brown people there. Well, sure. there's also poor brown people here. And we're told that many of them are in gangs. Are they going to flee the country? Maybe, because Trump says he's going to round those people up. But there's going to be other people fleeing the country as well. And they sound like they're not in criminal gangs. Why? Because we don't perceive them as poor brown people. But if you're in big pharma and working with the cartels as a member of big pharma, well, then you're associated with the funding of terrorists and with criminal gangs. And if you flee to someplace in Europe or to, let's just say, someplace in the Middle East that is especially protective of exactly these types of people, the regime types, how will that be portrayed? Probably not this same way. But those will be criminals fleeing our country to another country that, hopefully the good twin of Israel takes over by then, and maybe they don't want to protect these kinds of people. But it is interesting to just switch the locations and observe the same phenomena because they are the same. It is up to the State Department to decide which organizations to tag as foreign terrorist organizations, a decision it makes after consulting with other agencies in the federal government, which can take months. Oh no, little Marco Rubio is going to take months to figure this out? I doubt it. I mean, he better not take months. We need to figure this sort of thing out right now. I mean, don't we? They're criminal foreign terrorists. Mr. Trump's order gave just 14 days for state to make a recommendation. Oh, so we're being told that the delay tactic exists. And when it comes, we should expect that the delay tactic should exist because it's necessary to take that amount of time. That's how long it's always taken in the past. So 14 days, totally unreasonable. The department typically gives the label to groups with ideological objectives, while drug cartels and gangs have financial motivations. You see that? There's like this distinction that you have to keep between the cartels and the terrorists. The terrorists, those are like only those Muslim guys and, white nationalists in America, aka Trump supporters. And, those people, the Taliban that shut down our drug trade with the cartels, those are terrorists too. From these people's eyes, right? You have terrorists on one side, cartels on the other. They're not the same. Cartels are just extremely violent businessmen who do business in the black market. They do illegal business. They're an international criminal enterprise that is extremely violent. Terrorists, you see, they're just extremely violent ideologically. And extreme violence, as long as it's not ideological in dissent of the regime, it's just business. Previously, Mr. Trump has indicated he wants to declare certain Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations as a way to apply maximum pressure on the country to rein in its dangerous drug trade. On Monday, as he signed the executive order in the Oval Office, he said Mexico will probably be unhappy with this step. Oh, yes, Mexico. They're going to be so unhappy. And believe as you will, I think when Trump is often talking about these foreign countries, he's specifically addressing the evil twin faction in those foreign countries, understanding that the evil twin faction recognizes its own interests wherever those interests exist. Okay. So if Trump is talking about the global evil twin and its interests in Mexico, he's going to say Mexico is not going to be happy with that. Everybody who has business linked to those cartels in any way throughout the regime is not going to be happy with that. And people who don't even know their businesses are linked to the cartel are very much hooked into these sorts of information sources and these sorts of viewpoints. And that will be signal to them, hey, you better worry about this. Those who support the designation often point to violence against Americans to justify the classification. So it's ideology and violence against Americans. And so that works again for American, quote unquote, white nationalists, Christian nationalists, because they invent the violence against Antifa, right? We had the Summer of Love in 2020, where all the real violence was the Proud Boys and other made up Fed-linked organizations who they could describe as Trump supporting. So it's really our violence problem, not theirs, because of the ideological differences. See, BLM Antifa doesn't have any ideological differences. Their ideology actually helps the regime agenda, so they're not terrorists. Drug cartels could easily turn into real terrorist organizations. Brian Michael Jenkins, a terrorist expert at the RAND organization, has said. So military action against the cartels could lead to more organized attacks on Americans, including inside the United States. Well, that's a warning. It should be scary. You don't want to see the American military actually take it to the Mexican drug cartels. I mean, you might, but would you if you knew that was going to increase violence against Americans? You wouldn't. And so that's why we can't do this. We don't want to provoke the cartels, you see. Once an organization is labeled a terrorist group, it is against the law for people in the U.S. to knowingly provide support to it, given the drug distribution system across the country, from kingpins to corner drug slingers and buyers. This could significantly broaden the number of people facing serious repercussions, potentially ensnaring people whose connections to the cartel are tenuous, or so they would have you believe. The drug distribution system across the country. But what is that system and where are they getting the drugs? We're told that all of the opium in Afghanistan went to the black market, but did it? What if the criminal enterprise just operated as a criminal enterprise? The drugs were cultivated and produced. They went on the black market. The cartels transport them around the world in coordination with legitimate businesses, shipping companies, who knows what else. And then some of that supply is directed toward big pharma, and some of it hits the streets to destroy our communities. It is a perfect regime plan, and all of it links into those cartels, which previously, due to their ideology, were not called terrorist organizations, but now they are. So anyone doing business with them is in big, big trouble. The charge of material support to terrorism carries up to a 20-year prison sentence, and in some cases, life in prison, if the support results in death, and it all results in death. It is not clear what this would mean for dealers in the United States whose clients die from overdoses. Gosh, what would that mean? Donald Trump keeps talking about how each drug dealer is responsible for about 500 deaths. Now, Donald Trump in that situation is not talking about some normal dealer on the streets. 500 deaths. I mean, maybe he is. I don't think he is. Some kid who sells pot at the local college. That doesn't seem like what he's describing, but maybe it is. He talks about the death sentence, quick trial, death sentence. Seems like he's talking about people higher up. This seems like it might be in line with that narrative that he's been pushing now for 3 years or longer. He said he had a deal with Xi to stop the fentanyl trade in China. Just cut it off. Nothing for the cartels. Nothing would get into the United States. Do you think he did it? He says he didn't do it. He says that the very deadly pandemic came in that ruined the trade deal. He had all these other deals with Xi planned, and then there was the fake election. Wasn't able to get the fentanyl thing done. And all this happened under Joe Biden, unless it happened before and we're just being told about it during Joe Biden's term, which again is a pattern that fits onto the macro of the last 4 years, and that people are going to have to realize at some point to understand, yes, Trump, et cetera, were in control during this period. The truth is the things that you were the most worried about, they already happened. Okay? So, got to understand the time distortion. But the point is the quick trial, all that goes much higher up. And how much higher up will it go as we see this story disseminated in waves, in cycles. Get those reruns in. Let people know this has been happening. They develop some understanding of the problem, and over time, we march forward. Now, people will say, well, that's why we need all the mainstream people waking up the normies. Maybe, but you're giving them an awful lot of benefit of the doubt, because the very same people, it could be argued, and I do argue this, and I do believe this, are keeping people trapped back further on the informational timeline, allowing that gap to just remain there endlessly as they lie to millions of people at a time. Maybe at some point we should just try telling people the truth and letting them catch up if they want to, if they can. And, there's an argument to be made that the truth is coming out from some places. If we are able to get ahead of other people, then we're getting more of it than other people are getting. But why are the biggest voices in the news, including from quote unquote our side, keeping people trapped back there when more current information is widely available? And so that problem has to be resolved at some point. People need to catch up so that they can make better decisions for themselves. Let's close this out. And there's one more. Mexico is one of America's largest trading partners. Fracturing the relationship between the two countries could have significant economic repercussions, including on millions of American jobs. Mexico has also been an integral to helping to control illegal crossings into the United States. If Mexico ended those efforts, it could lead to an increase in unlawful migration at a time when a top priority of the new administration is to reduce those flows. The impact on diplomatic relations would be severe, says a professor of international studies. Okay, professor. The impact on international relations would be severe because Trump is calling cartels terrorist organizations? How much of the regime is built up around cartel business? And that is the important takeaway of this next article, also from the New York Times, from the very next day. This is from last Wednesday, the 22nd. How labeling cartels terrorists could hurt the U.S. economy. Amazing. Hello, this guy. See how Mexican it is? Look, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Caballero. Another caballero. I don't know what those guys are. Extremely Mexican, though, apparently, according to the New York Times, the paper of record. All right. So we're going to just hit a few little parts of this. Disentangling cartel operations from U.S. interests in Mexico could be immensely complicated. Why? Oh, it's because it's so intertwined with everything. Mexico is the United States' largest trade partner of goods, and many American companies have manufacturing operations there. Well, that seems all right. Why would that be affected by cartels unless the cartels are, part of the business? Even more complicated, these criminal networks have extended their operations far beyond drug trafficking and human smuggling. Oh, well, are you sure you're supposed to tell us that? They are now embedded in a wide swath of the legal economy, from avocado farming to the country's billion-dollar tourism industry, making it hard to be absolutely sure that American companies are isolated from cartel activities. Now, wait, why would we need to be sure of that? Are you saying that we shouldn't call terrorists because too many American companies are doing business with them? Yeah, that's what they're saying. That is exactly what they're saying. Too many of our large American businesses are actually part of the criminal enterprise. Therefore, we can't go after the criminal enterprise. These businesses are too big to have to do business legally, too big to make legal. That is really something shocking. I appreciate their honesty, I guess. Let's skip ahead. No one. Okay, so this is Claudia Sheinbaum. Oh, no, sorry. Samantha Saltoon, senior advisor on sanctions policy and threat finance in the Trump and Biden administrations. So members of Congress have wanted to do this before. They haven't done it. But no one has done it because they have looked at what the implications would be on trade, economic, and financial relationships between Mexico and the United States. They've all come away thinking that such a designation would actually be super short-sighted and ill-considered, though prior administrations viewed the U.S.-Mexico relationship far differently than the incoming Trump administration appears to. Well, weren't you part of the Trump administration before? So they've looked at this before and they've decided not to do it because the trade, economic, and financial relationships are too intertwined. Now, what does that call for? No one doing it and just accepting that the cartels are going to be part of business forever? Or a decoupling, a deglobalization process so that we don't actually have to do any business with foreign companies that are part of the criminal enterprise. So then we only have American companies to deal with. And if American companies can't compete in America without doing business with the criminal enterprise, why do we want those companies? Oh, it's just too much a part of our life. There's too much riding on it to do this the right way. So what we should do is accept the level of criminality and just go on ahead with manufacturing goods abroad, globalization. And, you know, America first is never going to happen because too much of our society depends on what we've already accomplished through globalization in league with the global criminal enterprise. It's an amazing admission. Our economy is too big to operate legally. Can you see how the end of this situation could quickly make America great again? Oh, we can't get XYZ from foreign countries. I guess we're going to need American businesses to pop up quickly and fill those needs right here in America due to American manufacturing or American data work or coding or whatever else. Separating from the global criminal enterprise is a must. It's not a question. These people act like, well, you know, it's just going to cost too much money to do it. So we're going to have to just continue allowing the drug smuggling and the human trafficking, no matter how much it degrades us morally. We need cheap goods from China. Can you imagine if we didn't have things appearing on our front porch from Amazon every day forever? The foreign terrorist designation could lead to severe penalties, including substantial fines, asset seizures. Oh, isn't that Executive Order 13818? I think it's 818. And criminal charges on companies and individuals found to be paying ransom or extortion payments. Oh, whoops. U.S. companies could also be ensnared by standard payments made to Mexican companies that a cartel controls without the American company's knowledge. Well, I guess you're going to have to prove you had no knowledge of that. Can these companies do that? If they can't do it, well, then it's so weird that they're like, you can't prosecute the crime. There's just been too much of it. There's been too much of it done. And the truth is, we've gotten almost the entire society of normal people complicit in our crime. So you can't hold us accountable without holding them accountable too. So I guess you can't hold anybody accountable because you're not going to want to hold them accountable. Some extortion payments, even if made under duress, could be considered material support to cartels, said Pablo Zarate, senior managing director at FTI Consulting, an American firm that released a report laying out some of the risks of the terrorist designation. Former U.S. officials and analysts pointed out that it would be nearly impossible to identify which business may employ or be affiliated with cartel members, given the tens of thousands of people involved and operating in various industries, including the hotel and agriculture sectors. Wait a second. So you're suggesting that the cartels have something to do with the factory farms that employ all the illegal aliens, or the hotel chains that employ and also house all of the illegal aliens? You're saying the cartels are involved? Get out of town. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that these terrible organizations who have been put so fully on display for the last few years could be involved with the criminal enterprise. Gosh, I am stunned. They're too big to prosecute. The political influence it's amazing. It is amazing, isn't it? All the regime figures. How many politicians are involved with the cartels and these businesses? Cartels use the legal economy to launder money, which could mean that unwitting employees working at a resort or an avocado packing company could technically be on the cartel payroll, but not know it. Ah, darn it. Ah, shucks. Ah, darn it to heck. What are we going to do about this? Oh, wait. So let me get this straight. These corporations, they're basically dual use, right? We talked about dual use with the biolabs, for instance. They're going to study viruses to prevent the next pandemic, but they're also going to study viruses if they want to create biological weapons. They have to create the biological weapon in order to study how to prevent biological weapon creation. We're like, what if the biological weapon leaked out of our lab that we wear these incredible suits in? Oh, if you just put a cloth mask on, it'll be just fine. We're now being told, by the way, that John Ratcliffe says, here's a report from the Biden administration that says it was a lab leak. Was it a lab leak? Well, probably not, because there wasn't a pandemic. There was a leak of a story that everyone believed, and there was also maybe some kind of poisoning, but all COVID deaths are data malpractice or medical malpractice. So the evidence that there was a pandemic is non-existent. And if there was no pandemic, then there was no lab leak. And if there was no lab leak, then being told that now some part of the intelligence community believes that it was more likely that it was a lab leak than released in Nature is entirely meaningless. It's totally, completely meaningless. But of course, that's where we are now. I took myself completely off track making that point about this very new story. Again, breaking news. It was a lab leak. It's insane. We were talking about factory farms, the hotels, the interconnection, too big to fail, too big to go legal, too big to tell the truth. Doesn't matter. I'm going to move on. If someone puts in the chat what I was just saying right before that, I will come back to it. But the compromise. Bay Theater Dave says QPost 15 claims that 70% of all government officials are compromised. And yeah, that makes total sense to me. I wouldn't be surprised if it was higher than that. All doing the work for all of these organizations. Of course, they never get shut down. This is what I was saying. So we have corporations making all this money with their dual use organization. Part of it is a front for something in the legitimate economy. And the other part is the facilitation of the global regime's agenda on black markets, through back channels, in a totally illegal economy. Okay. So a shipping container can ship us all the foreign goods we need, cars, washing machines, computer products, whatever it is that we might get from a foreign country. And it can also ship us drugs, women, and children. And it turns out it does do that thing. So it's dual use. One of them is the offensive, in this case, the illegal business. The other one is the defensive. See, we're doing it all for this reason, just to bring these products over. So if we think of these companies that are intertwined with the global criminal enterprise, think of them as dual use. You got the cover story. This is the legitimate part of the business that we are all kind of complicit in a way. Our friends and neighbors are employed at these companies. We use the products of these companies, but also they're doing this other terrible thing. We all, not we all, but many of us use Facebook and Instagram and social media apps. We know they're taking all our data. We know that they are influencing how we see the world based on their algorithms. They can influence us emotionally throughout the day. They can keep us in a state of anger or fear or whatever it might be. But this is how we share pictures with our family and stay in touch. And so people can't let go of it. And on some level, that makes total sense because it's become intertwined with our lives and we don't see any way out of it. Again, this is more of an addiction than anything else. We've come to rely on something that is absolutely terrible for us. And because it provides some good and we don't want to leave it, we don't actually deep down want to leave it, we will use the small good that it provides that we could get somewhere else as the reason to continue engaging in the bad thing. And so, as a society, we're kind of at the point where all of it is too intertwined, where all of these organizations are too big to simply let go of. Let's get back to this article. Banks may turn away customers because they may not think they are worth the risk if they have links to Mexico, said a former State Department official in the Biden administration. Eric Jacobstein. Banks could ultimately decide to avoid entire sectors perceived as high risk, said Fabian Teichmann, a Swiss lawyer and expert on terrorist financing. Mr. Teichmann singled out Mexico's avocado trade, where cartels have drastically expanded their operations as one area that could come under greater scrutiny. And by the way, the New York Times, it should be noted, is one of its owners. I'll get to this in a second, but is Carlos Slim. Son of a. Hold for processing. I'm pulling something up from the machine so that it's ready and I can jump over there and I don't forget it. Okay, great. Perfect answer. Other types of financial institutions that facilitate payments between the United States and Mexico could also be affected, such as Venmo or PayPal, which Mr. Trump's close confidant, Elon Musk, helped found. Better keep that in mind. Elon Musk might be the one in big trouble here. The terrorist label could also push big parts of Mexico's economy further into the shadows. It's going to get even more criminal if we try to call it criminal, where cash is used instead of electronically traceable transactions, making it harder for investigators to examine the cartel's financial structures. Mr. Teichmann said, if people can't bank legitimately, they escape to so-called underground banking systems. Cash is an underground banking system? Well, that's crazy. Also, cash can be used to finance criminal enterprises. I thought only Bitcoin could be used for that. The multinational banana producer Chiquita Brands was found liable in 2024 for killings by a Colombian right-wing paramilitary group that was designated as a terrorist organization. Okay, well, I just bring that up so that we can recall, what is it, the Banana Wars? Save that for another time. The foreign terrorist designation could also pave the way for the United States to deploy forces inside Mexico against criminal organizations without the Mexican government's consent, as it did in Afghanistan and Syria. But here's the thing. It's Donald Trump, not Joe Biden, not someone else. The permission structure is going to be there. It's going to be just fine. Donald Trump was actually friends with AMLO. Claudia Sheinbaum is AMLO's protege. You think Claudia Sheinbaum doesn't know the deal in Mexico and that Donald Trump is going to do what Donald Trump needs to do? Doesn't mean she's not going to speak up for herself and play her part dutifully with her little phrases that she tells the media. But I don't think we have to worry about Claudia Sheinbaum resisting all of this on behalf of the regime. It's a little silly to think so. But Afghanistan was occupied by the United States, and Syria's government lost control over much of its territory. in recent years. That gave Washington some cover under international law for the American military to deploy troops and launch special forces operations to kill or capture terrorist leaders in those countries. Oh, you mean so they used the terrorist thing as the predicate for doing the military things they already wanted to do? Got it. Donald Trump's not allowed to do that, you see. Mexico, however, has built up cooperation with the United States over 30 years to counter the cartels. Mexico could threaten to halt cooperation if the U.S. is seen to be violating Mexico's sovereignty. When the federal prosecutor's office arrested Mexico's former defense secretary during Mr. Trump's first administration, the Mexican government halted all cooperation with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. So that's the DEA. Okay. So if they go after Mexican officials, the defense secretary, during Trump's first administration, the Mexican government stopped cooperating with DEA. Oh no. What a terrible, terrible outcome. What does that say about DEA? Unilateral action would be catastrophic, said some guy from the regime who used to work at the U.S. Embassy. It would dismantle any collaboration and decades of Republican and Democrat efforts to build a defense relationship with Mexico. If you don't like cooperation now, wait until Mexico cuts all ties. Well, here's the thing. We got multiple reports throughout the last 4 years that Joe Biden's fake administration had no contact with the Mexican government. They might have had contact with certain elements, but not the legitimate ones, not the ones in charge, not the ones Donald Trump is going to do business with. Who cares about decades of Republican and Democrat efforts? That's just the uniparty. So they're worried about Donald Trump unwinding the situation as they've created it over decades, which is the same pattern for every bit of globalization in their entire project. Donald Trump just keeps hitting issue after issue, going down throughout the entire web they have built and dismantling the whole thing piece by piece. Did a bunch in the first term, did a bunch in the second term. Now he's doing a bunch in the third term. And of course, this is what they're ultimately reacting to. Okay. I said we were going to talk about Carlos Slim for just a moment. Carlos Slim does not own the New York Times, but he is a significant shareholder. As of 2015, he became the largest shareholder of the company's Class A shares, owning 17.4% of those shares. However, his ownership is limited, and it does not give him control of the company. The Class B shares, which offer more control, are still primarily held by the descendants of Adolph Ochs, who purchased the newspaper in 1896. In 2009, Slim loaned the New York Times Company $250 million during a financial crisis. Initially invested $127 million. By 2015, he increased his stake to 16.8, and then in 2017, he began selling some. So the numbers sound like they're just a little bit off there. But he's a 17% stakeholder of Class A shares in the New York Times. Now, is he linked to the Mexican, and I typoed here, cartels, the Mexican cartels? There is no credible evidence linking Carlos Slim to Mexican cartels. Okay. Here is an article in the first source here. Elon Musk insinuates that Carlos Slim has ties to organized crime. So regime sources say that no, he doesn't. He's actually a totally legitimate businessman in upstanding organizations like the New York Times, organizations that would never be linked to the global criminal enterprise as just described in the pages of the New York Times. And the pages of the New York Times just right there said that this would be bad for Elon Musk. I wonder if he knows this. I wonder if somehow this position is linked to that position. Wall Street Mav said, Carlos Slim is a Mexican billionaire worth over $70 billion. He is the largest shareholder in publicly traded shares of the New York Times. He's also known to have significant ties to the Mexican drug cartels. You don't become a billionaire in Mexico without being part of the network that is controlled and protected. In fact, you don't become a billionaire anywhere without doing business with the global regime. If you are not advancing their agenda, you're not a billionaire. And people should realize this, because there's a whole lot of billionaires out there and everybody's just like, oh, well, this is probably one of the good billionaires. No, it's probably not. And maybe some have flipped. Maybe there are certain billionaires who never have to go down that path. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, who knows? Donald Trump and Elon Musk both might have flipped, by the way. And, Trump has had his positions for seemingly his whole life, but that's going to be solved one day. I don't know what the right answer is, just to be clear. By and large, though, you should assume with these billionaires, with these transnational corporations that have these links to organized crime or are clearly fronts for something really nefarious, if part of their business is nefarious, then the other part is just the public-facing side that is legitimate, but the ultimate money, the ultimate business, like, again, the social media companies, underneath that is we are the product, and the product is our data and everything about our lives. And then that's sold to people who want to exploit us and overthrow governments, etc., and consume all of our energy forever, in addition to whatever finance and whatever else they're able to gain or take from us. Take a break for a quick second. Snowcat operator gifted a subscription. Thank you once again. And there was a Rumble rant in there. Crystal Anon, $20. Caught you live finally. Thanks for what you do. Thank you for the support. So we've been talking about the criminal enterprise for a long time, what the cartels do and how those are linked to the kind of upstanding high society types, elite culture, transnational corporations, billionaires, philanthropists, etc. It is all intertwined. And that is why the New York Times is right now defending the cartels from Donald Trump. He wants to call them terrorist organizations. They're like, nah, you're just taking this whole thing a little too far. They're not terrorists. They're, just violent criminal enterprises with financial motivations. They don't have that ideological motivation the way terrorists do. Therefore, there's absolutely no points in actually being angry at them. Okay, so last week on Friday, we talked about Donald Trump visiting Western North Carolina Western North Carolina and maybe Eastern Tennessee. I'm not sure if he made it to Eastern Tennessee, but they were certainly affected by the flooding. And of course, who knows what weather manipulation went on? Who knows what manipulation of drainage went on? Not the fun kind of drainage. And who knows what kind of manipulation of the dams went on? All of those things could have potentially caused or exacerbated that flooding. Donald Trump went down to visit with some of the people down there who want to keep their land. They want to rebuild. He had them talking specifically about how the insurance companies had totally bailed out on them. And so from there, he left and flew out to Los Angeles, where he held a press conference with leaders from California. And I say leaders in quotes. Many of them are just illegitimate people elected in totally fake elections. And there were also some good and decent people there as well. Obviously, Melania was right next to him. Rick Grinnell was there as well. Rick Grinnell is kind of Trump's envoy to California, although I know he just named his celebrity envoys to Los Angeles a week ago. So Trump's doing this press conference, and I want to start us out just right at the beginning of this press, because it's almost immediately amazing. As soon as Trump starts talking, I want to encourage you to pay specific attention to him around 1 minute. So just so you can watch all this play out. Maybe it's better that I previewed a bit. We're going to hear Donald Trump talk about how nobody wants to move out of their homes. Okay. If we think of this from kind of the 40,000 foot view as a construction project, which I believe that we should, and there are hints in this exact language Trump uses to suggest that, then people wanting to stay in their homes and have insurance pay for their rebuild so that they can rebuild better than they ever were before. Well, whatever construction project was planned is not going to work out. And I think in the kind of big picture that we talk about often, we have this plan as it goes along, this build back better agenda, this regime agenda, all of this. And then we have Donald Trump racing down the side of the canyon as the train is passing through, and he's going to hijack this train, destroy the rival gang, the tech bros and the scientific materialists, and keep charging through with America First. So we have the Build Back Better train. We have the people who are trying to front run and take control of that agenda, people who have been part of that agenda the whole time. And then we have Donald Trump coming down, MAGA coming down, America First coming down, sovereign nationalism worldwide coming down on the other side. And they're going to rob that train instead. Okay. They're going to beat the rival gang, kill them, chase them all off, and they're going to take over. So if we have a construction project planned here, and all these homes were targeted for demolition, these different areas that were burned, targeted for demolition, for the Build Back Better agenda, for the Smart City agenda, for the 2028 Olympic infrastructure that they're trying to create all over Los Angeles. What does it mean that Donald Trump comes in and says these people are going to stay in their homes? Okay. And then what you'll see is Donald Trump talking about water. Take a bottle of water, because the whole thing is about water, right? The water manipulation. And we're going to get to that in a second. Then he takes a bottle of water off from the table in front of him, puts it on the floor, then looks at the fire helmet next to him and says, is this thing even real? It's amazing.
Unfortunately, it's a very sad period, but what makes you feel good is I met so many of the homeowners, and every one of them, a lot of them, and every one of them said to me they want to rebuild. I said, will you go elsewhere? No. It wasn't even like a question. They love the area. They love the people. It's like a family. It's incredible, actually, when you see some things like that. We just left North Carolina, and we had just a similar type of disaster. It was water instead of fire, but boy, that water did damage like I've never seen before. And then you come here and you see this. But the people are so amazing, and your fire department was so beautiful. Every one of them is in perfect physical shape. I said, what do you guys do? They have very high standards, I can tell you. And we took pictures with all of them, but very nicely they gave us a little helmet. And I said, you wear this, huh? Is this real? And they said, yeah. I said, it's awfully heavy. You have to be very strong to wear that. But that's the original, right? So it's pretty good. But I just want to thank everybody. We're going to be with you. Your governor met us at the plane, and we had a good talk, very, very positive talk. We have to work together.
And yeah, Gavin met Trump at the runway, the tarmac. And apparently Gavin was waiting out on the tarmac, just standing there with his hands in his pockets for 10 minutes before Trump came down off the plane to greet him. And then Gavin tried to do a little bit of the touchy-feely stuff that Emmanuel Macron was doing when Donald Trump showed himself to be king of the world over at Notre Dame Cathedral. And then Trump heads off to this meeting with Karen Bass, the totally, obviously illegitimate mayor of Los Angeles. And then people like commie Congressman Brad Sherman and Ted Lieu were there. And, you know, we'll watch a little bit of it, but he's talking about immediately, just right off the bat. Yeah, these people are going to stay. They want to build back better. It's such a, not build back better, quote unquote, but yeah, also that, like, oh, you were going to build back better for the smart city and for the 2028 Olympics. How about we're going to build back better this way? And oh yeah, it's amazing what the fire was able to do. It's like the fire itself is a genius. And here is that. Hold on one second. Listen to this. Hold for processing. I need to start setting the timestamps just a second or two earlier, because they always begin playing before I've even shared the screen. All right, here we are. Check this out. It's really amazing.
No golden age without the Golden State. It's a great state. It's a fantastic place, and we're going to have a big celebration soon. We're going to come back, and we'll come back as much as you need, and we're going to turn it around, and we're going to open the coffers. You know, America wants us to be taken care of. This was a horrible thing to watch, and the way it just kept going and going, and then they'd find another area. It was like a genius on the other side. The fire was a genius, the way it kept moving, but we're not going to stand for it. I just met with the Olympic people, and they're all set to do a real job. So we have the Olympics, and I got them. You know, it was very interesting. I made the deal with the Olympics. I was called by your former mayor, and he said, would you call the Olympics? Because I must tell you, the Democrats, as you know, were not calling. They wouldn't do it. I don't know, there was a bad experience somehow. And I did, and I got along great with the Olympic Committee, and we got the Olympics, and then we got you the World Cup. That one I focused on with Gianni. Gianni was great, the head of it, and so you have that coming. And then we have the 250 years coming up, which is going to be a great celebration. But I'll never forget when I got the Olympics, and then I was president when I got them. I said, oh boy, it's too bad I won't be president. Who knew this was going to happen, right? I said, I won't be president because it would have been the 4 years. And in fact, I'd be retired by 4 days right now, I guess, right?
So he goes back to that refrain. That alone is amazing. He kind of said the same thing at the World Economic Forum and talked about how it was amazing. You know, if I hadn't skipped that term, I wouldn't be president with all these great things happening that make America look really incredible. That would be cause for this massive American celebration. We are this incredible country that is on the rise. Build Back Better worked completely. The regime intended to run with that. And they intended to do it, in my assessment, under an establishment Republican. Who would that be? Ron, JD, Glenn, Nikki, one of them. Just saying. Just saying. So Donald Trump is going to get credit for all that stuff. But to go back, he just said it was like the fire was a genius. It would go to a new area. Like it knew exactly where to go. Isn't that crazy? It knew exactly what houses to visit that fire. Gosh, so unusual. It just hit this one area and this other area and this other area. And it was caused by climate change, but it would burn and then it would jump 30 miles away and burn somewhere else, like the exact houses. And then it would jump somewhere else 30 miles away and burn those exact houses. It's crazy. The distance between Pacific Palisades and Altadena. I mean, as the crow flies, it's got to be 30 miles. I think it's probably 30 miles. It might be more than 30 miles because the 101 basically goes, I mean, Pasadena going across just on the 101. Never mind. We don't need to talk about Los Angeles geography, but it's probably it's got to be 20 or 30 miles. Fires don't jump 20 or 30 miles due to climate change. That's not something that happens. Okay. And so, of course, then we have to posit arsonists. Arsonists were able to do the targeted houses and they targeted to all of these different areas. Now, is there some massive unit of arsonists involved with some sort of criminal enterprise, mafia, one of these criminal gangs, whatever it was? Maybe. Okay. Got to leave it on maybe. Can't just outright say no, it's possible. But it really doesn't seem like it's probably something like that. Regardless, so the fires jump over distance and over time, like just a few days ago, a new one started in a totally different area. It's not climate change. Doubtful on arsonists. The fire is a genius. It just jumps around place to place, whatever place needs burned, fire's got it. It's pretty incredible to see Trump just saying these things. And, you know, somebody might say, I think you're taking a little bit too much from the things he's saying. You're kind of just taking some liberties with these words, interpreting them one way rather than another way. Bay Theater Dave says 36.8 miles from Altadena to Palisades. Certainly by road it is, but I don't know if that's by the crow flies. You can let me know. The fire's genius. It's just moving around. And Trump is laying things out like this. The people are definitely going to move back. He's saying it in front of a national audience here, or it's certainly on the record to these people's faces. Moves the water out of the way. Strange. Maybe it was just that he wanted to move the helmet. Maybe that was it. Still strange, especially with the history of water and water bottles and the drinking with the two hands, the funny stuff, moving the Fiji water bottle around. Remember the Fiji connection to these LA fires and the lack of water? All of that is in play. He knows what he's doing. And the fire helmet, is this even real? And also why, oh, never mind. I was about to ask a really stupid question and then I realized what the answer was. And now you're just not going to get to know it. Let's jump to this moment of the speech. And I'm going to let this one play for a minute because this one is yeah, let's let this go for a couple of minutes here because he goes through a few major subjects here.
So we're declaring this a national emergency. By doing that, I can give you immediate permits. I'd ask that the local permitting process be the same. Some of the people were saying they're going to be forced to wait 18 months for their permits. And I don't think you're going to do that. I can't imagine that. So they are literally in a position right now. They'd like to start tonight and they'll clean their site. They'll do everything. They just want to start. And they were very concerned with the 18 months. So I'm sure you can get it down to, I would say, not even 18 days. They are ready, Mayor. They are ready to start. I met so many of them. The fire took place. It's nice and cool there now. And they want to start taking the debris. They want to take the debris. They want to do everything. They'll get rid of everything. They're going to do it by their own hand. And you're going to see some amazing things happen. So we're waiving the federal permits. Either waive them or give them to you so rapidly it's going to be essentially the same thing, but we're going to try and just waive them. And we'll rely on the local, but the local I hope is going to do the same exact thing. They're literally ready to start right away tonight. So if you could do almost the same thing or the same thing would be great. For a building permit, you're going to have to, check things out a little bit. A lot of them, every single one of them said they're going to rebuild. I didn't have one person say they're selling or they're leaving or they're disgusted. They love their community, and it's incredible. We even had one from your neck of the woods, right? Yeah. Do you want to stand up? It was so nice the way she greeted my wife in a very different language, right? And it was very nice to see. And you're staying and you're going to rebuild and everything else. Yeah, everybody. So it's really great. So I'm signing an executive order to open up the pumps and valves in the north. We want to get that water pouring down here as quickly as possible and let hundreds of millions of gallons of water flow down into Southern California. And that'll be a big benefit to you. If you don't want it, you're going to tell me, but I can't imagine it. I tell you who does like it is the fire department. When I said that, they were very happy with that. They didn't mind hearing that. But we have a lot of water that is available. And I hope you can work that out among yourselves. But I think this will show that we have to have that water. We have to have that water. You're talking about unlimited water coming up from the Pacific Northwest, even coming up from parts of Canada. And it pours down naturally. It has for a million years. For a million years, it pours down. You'll never run out. You'll never have shortages, and you won't have things like this. And when you do, you'll have a lot of water to put it out. So I'm going to ask that you figure that out. But I really strongly recommended this 7 years ago, and I think I'm going to just do it. If you have big problems, you're going to let me know, but I just can't even imagine it. But we're also surging federal resources and assistance to the state. And California must adopt the common sense policies to prevent fires. And we all know that. You know, we were talking 7 or 8 years ago, I was talking to people from Austria, people from Finland, people that live in forests. One of the gentlemen, one of the top great leaders of Austria said, we don't have forest fires, and we have trees that are actually far more flammable than they have in California, but they literally rake their forest. They take down, if a tree comes down, they take it down. They say you have 18 months. After that, it's like a matchstick. And I know environmentally, some environmental groups like the trees to just melt into the ground, but when they do melt into the ground, they become an inferno. So I think you're going to have to change your ways in terms of that. You have 30 years of leaves, and those leaves are dry as a bone, and they burn. You know, interestingly, because I was at Paradise, who's the general, right? Long time ago.
So there's a lot in there. And again, he's saying very specifically, we need to get those permits right away. People want to start rebuilding right now. They want to have those lots cleaned out. And he gets some pushback throughout the event from some of the Democrats in the room, because he's basically putting them up in front of everybody and saying, let's watch these people defy me. Let's watch them defy me and they need to defy me in order to carry out the agenda they have planned. And part of that agenda, part of the way things work in California, is these organizations there have all their different policies. And you hear Karen Bass mention it at one point. She talks about how they're going to be allowed to go back there and clean their lots once it's safe, once they've met the proper regulated limits for exposure to various chemicals, right? They'll always find a way to limit what people are able to do. One more clip. And I just need to back that up. Here we are.
What I'm doing, because what I'm doing, I guess, is controversial. I don't know what's controversial about sending millions and millions of gallons of beautiful fresh water from the Pacific Northwest and further up than even that into an area that's bone dry. We have to, you know, I have a house in Beverly Hills, and you get notices every once in a while. They want you to go down to 38 gallons per person or something, per house, per person. I say, you mean you can only have, 38 gallons sounds like a lot. It's not a lot. And they want to do that every once in a while. And you just think it's ridiculous when you have like just about as much water as anybody in the country. And we shouldn't be in a position where you have tumbleweed that's dry as a bone, that even tumbleweed can be nice and green and rich and loaded up with water, and it's not going to burn. You don't even have to remove it. It's not going to burn, but it's just dry. So I hope you can all get together and say, I'm so happy with the water that's going to be flowing down, because I just don't see anything. They talk about the Delta smelt, which is a fish that's this big, but it is really not, doesn't have to be protected because it's in other areas. It's in numerous other areas. So it doesn't have to be protected. The people of California have to be protected.
Mr. President.
And you can't make it any clearer than that. You don't have to protect this fish. You got to protect the people of California. And I might as well bring up this is part of the EO background research I was doing last week. So he's talking about the permits, saying, let's get these permits done. We're going to push them through. I'm going to make sure that all of this gets pushed through. The water is going to be opened up so something like this never happens again, because we're constantly told about how California is droughted. And again, that's all the Resnick family. The Palm Wonderful, what is the other product? Oh, the Fiji water, of course, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago. They have all this control over the water in California. And so Donald Trump puts out an executive order last week called Putting People Over Fish, Stopping Radical Environmentalism to Provide Water to Southern California. Very, very short executive order. During my first term, the state of California, at the direction of its governor, filed a lawsuit to stop my administration from implementing improvements to California's water infrastructure. My administration's plan would have allowed enormous amounts of water to flow from the snow melt and rainwater in rivers in Northern California to beneficial use in the Central Valley in Southern California. This catastrophic halt was allegedly in protection of the Delta smelt and other species of fish. Today, this enormous water supply flows wastefully into the Pacific Ocean. So Trump's talked about this for a long time, and it's a big deal in Central California as well, because that's where a lot of the country's agriculture comes from. And even more of it could come from there if the water was provided. You can drive up and down California. I haven't done this, obviously, in, I don't know, 5 years or something, but you can go from Northern California down to Los Angeles, take the 5, and drive through all of Central California and just see nothing but dry fields, billboards about water, some of them like handmade signs encouraging people to understand at least that the government is responsible for their water shortages. And so Trump's going right at it here. That lawsuit was brought to the world and supported by these environmental activist organizations that, of course, are all funded by globalists. It really is all just part of the same thing. And why would they do that? Well, they would do that on behalf of somebody like the Resnicks or like Rick Caruso, who wanted to do the rebuild here. And those rebuilds are always possible. They can rebuild anything they want in California because with no water, well, gosh, any part of California can end up just burning at any time. This isn't even fire season. This is the middle of winter. And California, Southern California has winter. It's the rainy season. So these are the organizations that were involved in bringing that Delta smelt action. Defenders of Wildlife Action Fund. And you can go down and find out who they're involved with. The woman who is the CEO and president was appointed by Bill Clinton to serve as the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Huh, how about that? Sponsorships from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Same globalists as always. Same global philanthropists. What else do we have? Bailey Wildlife Foundation. Biophilia Foundation. Whatever that is. That's gross. Doris Duke. Darcy and Richard Cupcho. The Henry Philip Kraft Family Memorial Fund. Wendy McCaw, the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, Park Foundation, Legacy, the Resources Legacy Fund Foundation, Bill and Alice Rowe, the Turner Foundation, Wilberforce Foundation, the M.G. Murdoch Charitable Trust, the New York Community Trust, and the Robert W. Wilson Charitable Trust. And it just keeps going and going and going and going. Here's their political activity, blah, blah, blah. Let us continue. Also, that same case brought to you by the San Francisco Baykeeper Organization, leftist activist group funded by the Sierra Club, the Surfrider Foundation, and Heal the Bay. They're one of those little subgroups. They plant this one down so that it can handle all the background on one lawsuit that needs to be completed so that they can keep total water control under one wealthy family. Isn't that great? You just put out all of these little lawsuits and you can completely control the government if the government also wants to be under control. And that's how it always goes. They just, hey, can you let this go through? Hey, courts, you want to do this friendly settlement? That'll become our new law, our new policy. Everybody's agreed. Cool. All these, I'm saying a lot today. Apologies. All of these partner organizations, you can go through and check their funding and who runs them. Let's keep it moving. Natural Resources Defense Council. By the way, this is all on influencewatch.org. They do excellent work over there. Natural Resources Defense Council highlighted this part. A Washington Examiner investigation discovered that at least 9 examples of NRDC participating in a sue and settle process among more than 70 examples of the practice among left-leaning groups with the Environmental Protection Agency during the first term of the Obama administration. In this process, a group sues the EPA and federal court to get the agency to issue new regulations by a certain date. The EPA and the plaintiff then meet behind closed doors and agree on a deal. Finally, a judge issues a consent decree, making that agreement, usually whatever the group wanted done, the law. The law. How about that? They were involved in the Keystone XL pipeline and the protests of that. Pesticide Action Network, ties to the White House, goes through the people and the funding. Tom Steyer. How about that? The billionaire who was running in the Democrat primaries in 2020. Tom Steyer. He runs this little activist group, and he helped with the Delta Smelt litigation that helped keep California's water totally under control and inaccessible to the people of California and whatever their interests might be. Can't have it, can you? What would have happened for all of those people whose homes burnt down in all these California fires? Some of my, I won't say that I was affected directly by the Malibu fires, but did know people who were. I certainly wasn't myself. Obviously, I never lived in Malibu. I had friends who lived in Northern California who were affected greatly by those fires and actually were forced to leave their homes and spend days with their family at a hotel. And yes, they're fine. Yes, their home is fine. All that is good and a blessing. I'm not saying that they themselves are the extreme version of any victim in the situation, but it affected their lives. Why did any of it happen? Well, it's a construction project and the water's under control by bad people. This is the other organization, Earth Justice, formerly the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. And of course, they're in everything. Every one of these environmental examples. Initial funding from the Ford Foundation, Sandler Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, David and Lucille Packard once again, and Brainerd Foundation. Those are their other funding sources. Its structure as a law firm was based upon the model created by the NAACP. How about that? Gosh, amazing. Keep going down. Litigation agenda, opposition to the Trump administration. So they're just a formal lawfare organization that does environmental lawfare on behalf of the regime to change our laws outside of the constitutionally mandated legislature. All of it part of that false reality layer. This is how the false reality layer comes to be. And then to get it removed before, people would have had to go to court against these regulations and then battle this lawfare apparatus with this money successfully all the way up to SCOTUS for a ruling that the agencies weren't actually allowed to put these sorts of rules in place. And they're not anymore because that court ruling happened. Where did that court ruling come from? From this Trump project. That's where it came from. I'm reading Neil Gorsuch's book, Overruled, right now. And it's all about this sort of thing, about how we've got this massive, sprawling bureaucracy that basically can't be removed because it's put this entire set of laws and rules in place. And unless it gets all the way up to the courts to knock it down, then it just remains law. And so it's funny because he kind of lays out without mentioning it at all, lays out the basis for his opinion in all of these suits that are dismantling that false reality layer, that totally illegitimate bureaucratic layer of the federal government. And it's a very interesting read for that reason. But this is how all those rules and regulations get put in place. Of course, what does Earth Justice have to do with all of these other leftist agenda items? Well, it's all the same money sources feeding into Earth Justice and this lawfare apparatus that feed into other issues-based, activist-based lawfare apparatuses. Founders here, financials, These are all the bigger ones, and you could then dig from there. But that's the Delta smelt. And so Trump put the executive order in place. Those rules are going to go bye-bye because the agencies actually don't have the authority to make those rules. They cannot enter into settlement agreements through lawfare to change the law. It is unbelievable that the country became so communist that regime lawyers could take nonsense litigation to regime-controlled courts, both sides funded by the same philanthropists and globalists, and then have the law by which everyone else has to live decided in those courts on the basis of rule writing, because no one could defeat their lawfare because no one wanted to. This is the sort of stuff that has to be collapsed from the bottom, okay? You're not going to go to your local officials and your illegitimate congressmen and senators and get them to pass laws that are going to remove this. It's not possible. The courts, the Supreme Court, has made it possible to collapse the thing from the bottom, but the government's not going to fix itself. The government is illegitimate for a reason. And the funny thing, again, is that these philanthropists, the corporate money that flows through the philanthropists and through their investments, by the way, in markets they control, and through other aspects of the global regime, all that made through the criminal enterprise, that money then directs the lawfare. The lawfare changes our government outside of the Constitution and creates a system of rules for all of us to live in that we can't do anything about. That's the whole regime system. It is all that interconnected. So, of course, there are parts of our normal society that when that thing collapses are going to be in for major shocks to the system. And I would suggest again that a lot of this has already happened in 2020. And that's what we saw. And the very deadly pandemic and the rest of it was a cover story over that. That, again, Trump hijacked for his own purposes. But that system, there are going to be shocks to that system. And I've said this a million times, but if there are aspects of your life dependent on the regime system, you should identify those aspects and figure out how to fortify in those aspects. If all your money is in a regime bank that could get shut off, for instance, and I'm not trying to scare anybody, then it's good to look at ways to diversify so that at least you have something over here and something over here in case this thing that is at some level regime dependent collapses. All right. And make it less serious. You're on Facebook still or Instagram somehow. And that's where all your family photos have been for the last 10 years. And you would be devastated if your account just vanished one day. Download all your photos, make it a practice to do that so that you're no longer dependent on that thing. And, it's also very good to recognize what that's taking from you in the meantime. But if you accept that and you have the other thing you like to do with it, well, make sure that you've at least fortified yourself there so that you don't lose everything. Or maybe you'll just learn the hard way. And sometimes people need that to happen. But you got to fortify. You got to reduce your dependence on those systems everywhere you see a dependence, and at least make it so that whatever collapse there is for you is recoverable. If you work for the federal government, if you work in one of these agencies and you're like, well, I'm just going to keep working there, hope for the best, hope that the agency's not cut out of the federal government, or that maybe I can retain my job and something reduced. Well, is your agency, be honest, unconstitutional? Because if it is, it's got to go. And the collapse of that is going to suck. But it's not going to suck for the people who realize, you know what? My agency is unconstitutional. It's probably on the chopping block some point near in the future. So what I'm going to do is figure out how to protect myself and get out into the private sector. Maybe that's begin looking for jobs in the same field in the private sector that aren't related to the regime. Or maybe it's saying, I'm going to take this next 6 months and start the business that I've always wanted to start. And by the time the agency gets dropped and I would be losing my job, I'm going to be ramping up into something that can actually take my life in directions that I always wanted it to go, but couldn't because I was too tied down to this job. You know, you got to fortify at some point. The whole point is to be fortified against the worst possible outcomes, which is why we discuss a range of outcomes in potential futures rather than emote about what the TV has shown us today. Let me see. I don't even know what the TV's big deals are today. Oh, this is going to be amazing. And I'm not going to get into it today, but oh, this is going to be so funny. Look at this. Look at the definite freak out here. Trump fires DOJ officials who prosecuted him. Oh, man. That's going to eventually get funny. By the way, the DeepSeek thing is so interesting. And I hope that we can maybe get into that today. I'm not sure if we'll be able to. I might do an episode just tomorrow, just because there's so much crazy stuff going on. Trump Justice Department fires officials who investigated Trump and launches special project into January 6 cases. Oh yeah, by the way, they determined that the pipe bomber was someone in the Capitol Police. Wow. Wowie, wow. I can't believe it. Breaking news. 5 years later, the pipe bomber wasn't someone in MAGA. Wow, wowie, wow, wow. It's going to be so dangerous if he pardons these criminals. They filmed a scene in a TV show, and everybody believed it. The pipe bomb thing was always bullshit. Always bullshit right from moment one. January 6th, 2021. People in our community were like, oh yeah, that pipe bomb thing, that's clearly bullshit. And people are just finding it out now. Breaking news 4 years later. What mistakes did they make in that 4-year gap when it comes to things having to do with January 6th? They probably believed that Cassidy Hutchinson was telling the truth in the sham January 6th committee. How dumb are they going to feel about that when they realize? And I don't mean to say that to mock them. I feel very, very dumb about things I didn't realize when I wasn't awake. All right. I talk about these experiences plenty. Still got to be honest about it. The things that I used to believe were really dumb. Some of them. I remembered all the facts from the central narrative, from the official story. I was really good at that. I was even really good at telling people my opinion about those facts. All of that was mistaken. The epistemology was mistaken. No information from authority. Extreme skepticism all the time. It makes it really difficult to get yourself trapped in those situations. It's not going to give you the answers to everything. It's not going to tell you how to feel about the paragliding go-kart incident, for instance. What really happened? What really happened? Someone in my chat was talking about Mark Levin's wife and saying Mark Levin was probably good. I'm not trying to take anything out on this person or anything. Just an example of what I think is a bad thought process. And this person has plenty of other good thoughts. Just this one I did not find impressive. And she said she thought Mark Levin was probably on the right side of things because his wife is at America First Legal and had worked on election integrity cases. Now I can't produce which election integrity cases she has worked on, but she is definitely, I guess, part of AFL, and that's Trump aligned, and that should be a good thing. And Mark Levin is sometimes Trump, but at the end of the day, they're extreme Zionists who believe that babies were baked in ovens and beheaded after the paragliding go-kart incident. And so, that means that there are aligned interests, sometimes perhaps, but that's it. Okay. That's like divergent worldviews. And one of them is nonsensical. What was I saying then? Gosh, I totally lost track. I shouldn't have gone to the Mark Levin thing. It'll come back to me. I'm going to pause for a second and take a look at the chat. Ah, yes, the pipe bombers. Ah, yes, the pipe bombers. And the nonsense, whatever people are emoting about in the within the central narrative today. Always emoting. Emoting is a zero information communication, unless you're talking to somebody who is close to you. Do we need to hear that Trump is, we are very upset that Trump is letting go of these DOJ officials. This is going to be a violation of the rule of law in America. He's tearing down our institutions. No, we don't. No, we do not. Although the DeepSeek thing is very interesting. Let us move forward. So Donald Trump left Los Angeles and went to Las Vegas. And more incredibly interesting comments in this brief appearance. He did a short speech and then took questions from the audience. Let me make sure that I'm right on track here. Yes, I am. Okay.
What's not to like? You know, they'd call up. It's funny. I was told today by one of the big leaders of the world would call for a telephone call with the president of the United States a year ago. And they'd say, would like to speak with, who is this? It's the head of Germany, the head of, it's name it, the head of France, the name of any country, it didn't matter. He would never pick up the call. They'd say, he'll call you back in 2 months. 2 months. He has his schedule. He's extremely busy sleeping. No. Macron of France, he'll call you back in 2 months. So 2 months comes along and there's no call. They say, he didn't call. The stories are, I mean, these stories are not very exaggerated. I want to tell you, they're a little bit for laughter, but, you know, it's only for laughter. The fake news will say, oh, he exaggerated. It was only 1 month, you know. But he would say, call you back. And then he'd never call, and then they could never get him on the phone. And the problem I have is that when I speak to and I speak to him immediately, they say, could we speak to the president? Would that be possible? We can do it anytime over the next month. They're so used to this, right? I say, no, I'll pick it up right now. Is he on the phone? Yeah, hello, how you doing? That's what, you know, get it over with, right? Get it over with. The only problem, they were so starved for love from the United States, I cannot get them off the phone. I can't get people, if you can't, I say, I have to go now, King, or I have to go now, President. But you can't get them off the phone. They're starved for love. You know, for years they haven't spoken. They didn't even know we had a president, if you want to know. But under our leadership, America is back open for business, and it's really open for...
I mean, what more can you say? You know, we got called conspiracy theorists for the last 4 years for saying this. Joe Biden will never be president. Joe Biden was never president. He just said that world leaders, the most powerful people in the world, would say that they couldn't get a phone call with the president. They didn't even really know that they had a president. Didn't seem like they did. What do you want him to say? What else is Donald Trump supposed to say? How much clearer can he make it? They never got called back. The most powerful people in the world, they never got called back. They never had phone calls with Joe Biden. They would call the president of the United States of America, and they just couldn't reach the president of the United States of America, even though they're among the most powerful people in the world. Why weren't they allowed to talk to Joe Biden, the very real president? Well, I would suggest he's not the very real president. And Trump there is hilarious, by the way. That's just a comedy routine. And he crushes it with the comedy routines. He just does. I think that's one of the things that makes them so mad at him, because they know he's funny And so they can call him all the names in the book and make him seem really bad. Oh, Donald Trump's the bad person. He's angry. He's mean. Nope. He's funny and you're not funny, Kami.
But a young waitress, I think you could call young. You're probably not even supposed to say young. Probably supposed to say a waitress. But a young waitress came up and I said, how are you doing? And in my restaurant in the hotel, and Trump, I said, how are you doing? And she said, not great, because they're after me so viciously for tips. They just want my tip income and they don't believe me and all of this. And she said, it's terrible. You know, sir, you should have no tax on tips. I said, what? So what you just say? No tax on tips. That was about the amount of my consultation. It's true. No tax. I said, what did you just say? Say those words again. Sir, no tax on tips. I said, thank you very much. You just won the election. No, we did research into it. I think it's going to be great. But under the Trump administration, the forgotten men and women of our country are going to be forgotten no longer. You know that. They weren't forgotten 4 years ago. On day one, I immediately halted the hiring of any new IRS agents. You know, they hired or tried to hire 88,000 new workers to go after you. And we're in the process of developing a plan to either terminate all of them or maybe we'll move them to the border. I think we're going to move them to the border. Well, they're allowed to carry guns. You know, they're so strong on guns, but these people are allowed to carry guns. So we'll probably move them to the border. Yeah. She said no tax on it. How about just no tax? We can do that. You know, if the tariffs work out, like I think a thing like that could happen if you want another thing. You know, years ago, 1870 to 1913, we didn't have an income tax. What we had is tariffs, where foreign countries came in and they stole our jobs, they stole our companies, they stole our product, they ripped us off. And, you know, they used to do numbers, and then we went to a tariff system, and the tariff system made so much money. It was when we were the richest, from 1870 to 1913. Then we brilliantly came in with an income tax. No, we don't want others to pay. Let's have our people pay. And then you had the Depression in 1928, 1929. I call it 1929. That was a bad time, but, you know, you didn't have tariffs then. You had tariffs that ended in 1913. But it was the richest our country ever was.
So I did an episode last, I guess, late spring, June 14th, called Read My Lips, No Taxes. And in that episode, I argued that it was not going to be possible to have a federal income tax after the point at which Donald Trump said that he was not going to have taxes on tips. Now, for many years, people in our community, Joe Lang has written about it actually, but many people have believed that Donald Trump brought the Fed back under Treasury. And the Fed is is our government's bank run by the regime bankers. It's not part of the United States government, or at least it wasn't. And the IRS are their bagmen. They charge us a rental fee to use their fiat currency, and they force the citizens of the country to pay them to use the currency in order to have a job or own a house, quote unquote, or do virtually anything else in our society. If you want access to money, you have to pay their rental fee, and you do that by reporting everything you do financially throughout the year and sending it to them. Here's everything I've done with your currency that I'm renting from you. Here's how much I owe you for a rental fee. That's what they make us do. Okay. There's no constitutional basis for it. The 16th Amendment was not properly ratified. It is a disgrace that we've had a federal income tax, and that it's not even a federal income tax. It's a global regime rental fee to participate in their fiat currency system. That is what it is, properly construed. So Donald Trump, if he is doing what I think he's doing, and kind of the grand theory of the case that I've laid out now for 4.5 years, if I am right about that, and I still feel very much on track on this, so I'm still going to believe that as long as it remains on track, it remains on track as far as I'm concerned. So I think that Donald Trump is going in the direction of writing these things back to the way they were, certainly at the Constitution, but I believe prior to that, and taking America back to that point. And so the federal income tax has to be done away with. Tariffs can replace everything the federal government needs to spend money on. And if we don't make enough money to have a federal government of this size, well, I guess that means we can't have a federal government of this size. And if it means that we don't make enough money to have a federal government at all, well, then I guess we don't have a federal government at all. And we're going to have our federal government reduced in incredible ways. And that includes even things like the Defense Department, because the way it was supposed to be is that there would be a militia in each state, and that the governor of that state was the commander in chief of that militia, and that the president would then call together the militias of the several states in order to defend the country against foreigners, not to go out and capture foreign lands on behalf of the global regime. And so, of course, that's been inverted like everything else, and Trump is unwinding that. If I'm correct about all that, then the government is going to be very small, and we're not going to need a federal income tax. We don't need to charge the people of the country a rental fee to use the country's currency, because it's not any longer going to be the global regime's currency. And it can still be called the US dollar. And I think part of what's happening in the world through drainage is that a lot of the money laundering of the fiat currency that has been produced on the back of American labor and, obviously American blood for centuries, at least decades, but centuries. The expansion of that through modern monetary theory, just the continuous printing of whatever new dollars they need, pinned to our backs forever until they crash the currency and replace it with central bank digital currencies. That can actually all be unwound and unlaundered. And as the money for the criminal enterprise gets unlaundered and gets seized, drained from the criminal entities, well, then that can just be disappeared back through the system, restoring the dollar, the value of the dollar, and eliminating the national debt. And of course, we talked about that the other day as well. The national debt is being eliminated. You cannot owe a debt to the people you've just defeated in a war, and the debt isn't legitimate in the first place. It's just what's called odious debt. And I posted on this over the weekend after someone in my chat on Telegram brought my attention to it. And I think that I didn't know that this was what it was called, but this is what it is. Odious debt is exactly what I've been describing here for a while. In international law, odious debt, known as illegitimate debt, is a legal theory that says the national debt incurred by a despotic regime should not be enforceable. Such debts are thus considered by this doctrine to be personal debts of the government that incurred them and not debts of the state. In some respects, the concept is analogous to the invalidity of contracts signed under coercion. Whether or not it is possible to discharge debts in this manner is a matter of dispute. Well, what if you are systematically eliminating the power of the debt holders on the basis of their criminality over the course of centuries, if not millennia? And of course, it is millennia. If you owe the bank $100,000, you got a problem. If you owe the bank $100 million, the bank's got a problem. The global regime bankers are who the war is ultimately against. They have already been defeated, although we are still watching kind of the public's understanding of that and whatever consequences might occur. And the faster the public understands that, by the way, the better chance the good guys have of robbing that train as it barrels through the canyon, rather than the tech oligarchs who just want to spin Build Back Better into the techno dystopia that certain sects of them, the scientific materialists, imagine for us. The more belief is on the side of the good, the more likely it is that we reach the good. That's why all of this is so important. Let us continue. But yeah, June 14th of last year, read my lips, no taxes. And then let's think about the 87,000 IRS agents. Remember the videos? They were being trained. They were going to be these armed IRS agents that Joe Biden hired. Oh, he hired IRS agents. Did he? What does that look like right now, listening to Donald Trump after understanding a devolution term? He's going to take those 88,000, not the 87,000. You see, these are slightly different. There's 88,000 of these. And rather than them being armed tax collectors, as all the uniparty right normies in the podcast sphere and online told you to be scared of, oh my God, they're doing 87,000 armed IRS collectors. And I don't remember. I don't think I ever bought into that in 2021, but I certainly remember reading the headlines. I think I even maybe talked about them on the show. What does it look like when Donald Trump says he's going to eliminate those or send them down to the southern border? Did he hire border agents under the guise of IRS agents? And then they told the public a false story about it, and everyone freaked out and learned a lesson about the IRS. Yeah, it sounds like that's what happened. Or they were just never hired to begin with, which is also possible. But either way, that 87,000 armed tax agents was a bullshit story. That was fake news. And it was pushed real hard by people on our side. Well, maybe they didn't know any better. Maybe they did. Maybe that's the sort of thing that you should know immediately isn't happening. Or not worry about it because, you know, what are you going to do? At some point, everybody's going to have to just stand up and take responsibility for themselves, unless you just want to pay taxes to pedophiles forever. And the funny thing is, people are like, well, the IRS was still auditing people. Well, just because the IRS doesn't have any force of government behind it doesn't mean it's not going to still operate as a private organization of the regime. It could, or maybe it was pursuing actual criminals. I don't know. But there could be an IRS stretching off into the future. And if people still sign up because they want to pay their taxes to the IRS every year, oh, I'm going to be a good taxpayer. Maybe it'll just continue to exist as a private organization. The Fed and the IRS, for all intents and purposes, were private organizations. So if people want to pay them, it's not like somebody's going to stop them. What are you going to need? What are you going to need to get the message? Like the IRS, you want them to contact you. Hey, turns out that we're not real. Stop paying us. I don't know. All I'm saying is he's taking us back to that point, unwinding things to that point. He's saying no taxes. It's not going to be possible to have a few categories that don't pay federal taxes, especially not in a world where transactions are done with cryptocurrencies. It can't be monitored, right? It would be like making cash transactions, which is what makes the tips so hard. If people are having their own person-to-person transactions and we get rid of all this bullshit licensing, you can't hire these people for your business unless they have licenses. Everything's got to be done through the state. Okay, you have to register your business and all your employees and all of this stuff. What if you just have a small business and there's someone that wants to work and you can pay them $100 cash a day and they'll help you make your business successful? You're not allowed to do that in America without going through the government. Well, you see, I have to have the IRS's approval in order to have my business. I need the state's approval to be able to earn a living, to see them, to look after my own needs. And even if I didn't need that, well, I would need the state's approval to hire someone else so that I can help them look after their needs while they help me make my company even more profitable. We need the state's permission for all of that. And then we need to register it all with the state and maintain the state's permission by paying the state to allow us to look after our own needs and transact in a private economy. That's how it's been. That's insane, by the way, that we would ever allow a state that power. But we do. We don't even think twice about it. Well, what does it mean if there are ways to do that that evade the system of the state that are totally legal? It used to be just like the sovereign citizens would do that sort of thing. And then, oh, the law would come down on them and RoboCops and our movement would cheer it on. Well, those people are dumb trying to do that. Nothing worse than those people. Like the kings of informational gatekeeping. Well, I'm just looking out for everybody else. Sure you are. You're looking out for everybody else by telling them that the condition of eternal indentured servitude is actually like a good thing because we all agreed on it. It's in the law. When those people eventually drop out, I am always overjoyed. And they always eventually do because it's such a morally and intellectually bankrupt point of view. No taxes. No taxes. It can't be any simpler than that. And he says it again and again and again. He's saying it now, not only as a candidate running for office, and that's always what we were told, that he was saying all these things because he was just sucking up to voters. He knows elections are fake, but he was sucking up to voters anyway by telling them that they weren't going to have to pay taxes. The rest of the Trump agenda wasn't good enough for people. I mean, sure, it won in 2020, but it wasn't good enough for people. He needed to go to that next step and say, oh, you're not going to have to pay taxes. He was just kidding. It was a campaign. Well, here he is saying it quite clearly as president. By the way, one of his executive orders took us out of the global tax structure. Did you know there was a global tax structure where we subsidize other countries' taxes? We have to pay them because what? They never told us, really. They're our ally.
Every single day of my term, we're living by the motto, promises made, promises kept. I kept my promises. It's why we won. It really is why we won. We won because of the past 4 years. We won because of that. But this is going to blow it away. Because when I came in, I had no experience. I didn't do this before. I never did this. I was never a politician before. I was talking JD Vance. By the way, hasn't he done a great job, JD Vance? Because JD went right to the Senate, and then he went to the vice president and said, JD, you're really upwardly mobile. He said, you're more so than me. I said, why do you say that? He said, you went from being a real estate developer to the president. That's a pretty big, I never thought of it that way. I guess I'm the most upwardly mobile politician in history. I didn't make any stops along the way. It will be the greatest honor of my life to serve not once, but twice, or 3 times, or 4 times.
Oh, what did he say right
there? Headlines from the fake news. No, it will be to serve twice. For the next 4 years, I will not rest. I will not yield. And together we will not fail. We will win, win, win. We will.
All right. So you get it right there. I mean, how many times does he need to say it? How many times does he need to say it? I know I'm crazy. I know that Joe Biden was definitely president. But also there's the guy that everyone knows is actually president. They know he's actually president twice with a full public mandate, doing real things. The proof that he and the military are aligned is that no wars were started while he was there. No wars. And then it's like, well, then wars started under Biden. That means, did they? Which wars? Ukraine? The war that started in 2014? Or is it Israel? The construction project that's been going on for literally 80 years. Which one? So, promises made, promises kept. He has been president for 3 times, or maybe it'll end up being 4. I'm all down for that. 2028. He's still got the energy. Let's go. I don't trust any of these other people, especially not the man he just called upwardly mobile. JD Vance, upwardly mobile, Trump said. Oh, and then JD, he had such a comeback that Trump just jumped right into the president's role. JD went from Trump hater, who had published a really, really inauthentic book called Hillbilly Elegy that was turned into a Hollywood movie by Ron Howard to make JD Vance look like he was from very humble beginnings. And he went to Yale and he served, and he's really made something amazing of himself. Now, he's very smart and very important, and he does all this finance stuff for Peter Thiel, and all of a sudden he's running for Senate in the fake elections of 2022, along with Blake Masters as the Peter Thiel guys. Of course, he wins by so much because now he has the president on his side. So he's the Ohio senator, and then he just gets plucked one day in July. Trump announces it on Truth Social. JD's the guy, I guess. 2 days before that was the assassination event number 1. 2 days before that, Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman were in a shouting match at a billionaire confab in Sun Valley, Idaho, about Donald Trump being martyred. And then Thiel's guy, JD, became the running mate in the fake campaign leading up to the fake election. And now JD Vance, we saw him get inaugurated as vice president. And he is playing a very good vice president. Donald Trump, he just shows up wherever Donald Trump just was, and then has a public display that gives him credit for the thing Donald Trump just did. And if they weren't calling him vice president, it would look exactly like JD Vance was playing the president right now, right after Donald Trump had already played president. It's like in Venezuela when you had Maduro and you had Guaido, but the regime was calling Guaido president. In this case, Trump and the regime are calling Guaido vice president. Okay. And maybe that will help people think about what I see as the relationship here. But JD Vance is following Donald Trump. I pointed this out, by the way, during the campaign. It was after the return to Butler speech when the opera singer was on, and then RSBN and some of these other channels, maybe it wasn't even RSBN, some of the channels broadcasting that massive rally with Elon Musk jumping for joy. They broadcast that, the return to Butler, featuring Donald Trump and also Elon Musk and JD Vance and all the super friends. It's weird when all the super friends show up, isn't it? All the fantasy team. But during the opera singer that Donald Trump brought there to sing to everybody, the channels cut away so that JD Vance could do an impromptu interview backstage, poorly lit, addressing all the things, sounding very based and red-pilled, getting his message out there just minutes after Donald Trump had spoken for an hour and a half. Why did we need to hear from JD Vance again? Why do we ever need to hear from JD Vance? Especially not after Donald Trump just says the thing. And I know people are probably getting upset about this. Like, why aren't you friends with JD Vance? He's so handsome. People are so gay for JD Vance. It is nuts. Dudes are like, oh man, JD Vance, he really says all the things that my favorite podcasters say. And he does it with those really cute eyes and that nice beard. And I just know this is a return to masculinity. And then all the normie uniparty right women out there who supported Ron and supported Nikki and all of them. They're, JD Vance is so handsome. When he does the Vance glance, yesterday was all about JD Vance saying to Margaret Brennan, is that what it is? I just don't care about that, Margaret. I care about not having illegal aliens in the country. Oh, that's so based, JD. That's so based. Let's look at JD Vance following up Donald Trump once again. Trump goes to Western North Carolina last week, and now JD Vance has got to go to Virginia to talk with Glenn Youngkin about how to save people from the storm there. Trump did it Friday. JD does it Monday. They make him look as though he's the president. They have him walking down the steps from the plane and shaking hands and taking pictures, getting into a big black car. It's amazing.
These stories just in the last hour that I've been on the ground of federal agencies that have not developed and deployed the resources necessary, of federal bureaucrats that have been a barrier as opposed to a facilitator of some of the federal resources. And I think the country has decided collectively that we want to help the regions of our country that were devastated by this flood. So why are the bureaucrats not doing the American people's will and frankly holding up some of the aid here? I want to hear from the governor here in a second, but let me just say one last thing. I've been the Vice President of the United States for all of 7 days. This is, I think, my 7th day on the job, and this is an incredible place to have my first official trip. I heard so many good stories of good people helping their neighbors rebuild, of a woman at a church helping an elderly woman clean off photographs that were destroyed by or at least damaged by the flood, of people who have volunteered their time, have come out of retirement, volunteered and donated their money to help people rebuild or fix houses. This is just an incredible place with incredible people. And I'm honored to be the vice president of a country that's as kind and generous as the people here in Damascus. So we're going to try to make sure the federal government does right by them. And I'm going to go back to Washington with that message and that directive from the people here on the ground in Damascus. It's great to be here. And let me just say one final thing. They are very, very, I think, blessed to have one hell of a governor in Glenn Youngkin. Thank you, Governor.
Bless you, sir.
Yeah.
Bless you, sir.
I don't know why he's going down there. I don't know why he needs to go down there. People say, well, he's just backing up Trump. Why do you believe that? I don't know why anybody believes that. I don't know why anyone gives any benefit of the doubt to anyone other than Trump. If you can see that someone is out there, like legitimately in front, like that's the guy, tell me what JD Vance has done. He hasn't woken up any normies. He didn't win us the election. None of that stuff happened. What has he done? He had a good debate against Kamala. No, wait, who was it? Tim Walz. Oh gosh, I forgot he existed. He had a good debate against Tim Walz. Who cares? What difference did that make? Tim Walz is a joke. Unless you believed everything that was on television, you would understand that Kamala was a fake candidate. The whole thing was a joke. We don't have real elections. And so I'm not sure what it was that he accomplished, that he did. He got us the people who were the most anti-Trump in the quote unquote conservative movement. He brought the uniparty right along. Ron supporters. Who was it? I don't know who it was. We talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. The Vivek Ramaswamy saga marches on. And of course, Vivek Ramaswamy was best friends at Yale with JD Vance and Usha Vance. And JD's son is named Vivek. And it seems like JD Vance was installed in that Senate seat in Ohio. And that was supposed to fast track him into national office, president or vice president, maybe Ron's vice president. Ron was going to be the hero of COVID. If you recall, he was presented as the hero of COVID. He was presented as the winner of the certainty winner of the fake primaries. There was a whole media operation built up around Ron DeSantis a year in advance, a year and a half. What is it? 16, 17 months in advance of him actually announcing that he was going to be running for president in May of 2023. His media operation started in at least January of 2022. And he ran for governor. And then immediately it was obvious, because Trump made it obvious, that he was going to run for president. And which is why Trump announced immediately after those midterms. And so, there was another story that was written, and that story is still playing out. Trump is just hijacking that story at every moment and making part of it his own with whoever comes with him, and the rest is sifted out and splits off, never to be seen again. And we just always assume that because he was nice to these people at some point, or because these people say nice things about us at some point, that all our interests are aligned. I don't buy into that at all. I don't know how people are not more skeptical about these figures. And I used this example last week just to run through it quickly again. There are a lot of people now who think that figures like, let's say John Bolton, he's an easy one. Most people don't like John Bolton. Or, I mean, Nikki Haley was his former UN ambassador. Said lots of good things about Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis doesn't seem like he's on the team. Or maybe he is. I don't know. Who else? Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence. Those are people who we in Badlands have considered for many years because, you know, some people kind of feel more strongly about it and some of us are just kind of open to these ideas, but that they might actually be good guys who played the exact role they needed to play and have just maintained their public image as anti-Trump or sort of Trump or whatever. A lot of people think they're bad guys, though. And if you think they're bad guys, you have to be able to apply the same mindset, even if you just doubt them. Even if you think, well, I think that they're probably good guys, but there's definitely reason to doubt. Why don't you apply that same thinking to the people who are there now? JD Vance, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., all of them. I have no problem with these people, potentially. But also maybe they're bad. We don't have to like them. We don't have to decide they're good because Trump brought them close to him. He's brought plenty of people close to him in order to be able to highlight them and their broader meanings. And it's possible that Vivek, through this H-1B visa thing, outed himself, or it's possible that he's outing JD Vance by association. I'm open to all these possibilities. Maybe JD Vance is out there to spotlight and expose Vivek Ramaswamy, or maybe it's to expose Peter Thiel and the tech bros. I don't know, but I have seen nothing so far to suggest that JD Vance is not aligned still with that side of the kind of libertarian tech bros who are nonetheless scientific materialists and not primarily interested in the good of the American people. They're interested in bringing on the machine world and getting rid of the useless eaters, managing everything in efficient ways so that the next thing can be built up. And eventually they'll call that thing the Ubermensch. I mean, it sounds dramatic, but it is exactly the same project. And it's exactly the same people, by the way. Neoconservatives are just in that same ideological line. I don't know why any of this is too hard for people to even believe or possibly consider that everybody aligned with the bad thing is also actually pursuing the bad thing. It's not 100%, but you got to consider it. So this is NBC News today. JD Vance's political team signs on to run Vivek Ramaswamy's bid for Ohio governor. So Vivek just got passed over for JD Vance's replacement in the Ohio Senate. And in response to that, he's going to run for governor. Vivek Ramaswamy, the guy who just a few weeks ago was the leader of the Americans are too stupid and our culture is too degenerate and rotted, not like Indian and Asian cultures where the people work hard. Ours is too low brow and incompetent. That's why we need millions of foreign workers. That was Vivek's argument. That guy expects that argument to play in Ohio in a race for governor after not being named Ohio senator. Now, Mike DeWine seems to be quite a rhino. So do we trust that? Do we trust his choice of John Husted, the lieutenant governor, to fill that Senate seat? Well, what was the Senate seat before? The Senate seat before was JD Vance, put there personally by Peter Thiel, and Donald Trump said, yeah, I guess that's okay. But then the fake election didn't produce a win for Blake Masters down in Arizona. Strange, huh? And then Blake Masters, I believe, just ran for Congress. And I think he lost that race as well, which is kind of amazing. I mean, maybe Blake Masters is doing this specifically to lose on behalf of the good guys. But I don't know why anyone would just assume that and give them the benefit of the doubt. Oh, right. Yeah, he lost in the Republican primary, Blake Masters did, to Abraham Hamadeh, who had an election stolen from him for Arizona Attorney General by Chris Mays, the woman who's bringing the lawsuit against Donald Trump's designation, his executive action for birthright citizenship. So the illegitimate Attorney General of Arizona is leading that litigation. She beat Abe Hamadeh in 2022 in the election that Blake Masters lost, the other Peter Thiel guy. But JD Vance won in a similarly fake election in Ohio. Isn't that interesting? And so then JD Vance moves along. Vivek wants his spot in the Senate, but doesn't get it. Husted gets it instead. And so now he says, well, you know what? Then I'll just run for governor. He's going to run for Republican governor of Ohio while being the face of H-1B visa support on behalf of big tech. That's what we're going to be told. And who's supporting him? Well, JD Vance's team is supporting him. Is Donald Trump supporting him? We may see at some point that Trump does, or we may see Trump hijack a sure thing Vivek Ramaswamy win based on Ohio's fake elections. So it's all possible. But he's not the one behind it yet. Vivek Ramaswamy has landed Vice President JD Vance's top political advisors to guide his soon-to-launch bid for governor in Ohio, a source involved in the planning told NBC News. The hirings follow conversations between Vance and Ramaswamy over the last 2 weeks, said this person, who granted anonymity to share details of private discussions. The hirings also signal that Vance's team, which overlaps in places with President Donald Trump's, is fully behind Ramaswamy, and that Vance himself is comfortable loaning out his advisor's talents to him. Ramaswamy, a biotech entrepreneur who has known Vance since their studies at Yale Law School, last week parted ways with the new Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, just as the federal spending watchdog project was getting off the ground. That's because of the H-1B thing, because he wasn't doing anything and there was a falling out, or so the reporting goes. Expect Vivek to announce his candidacy in mid-February, the source said. For Vance, it's an early flex of the political muscle that helped elevate him first to Senate in his and Ramaswamy's native Ohio, and most recently to the vice presidency. That's not what did it. Peter Thiel installed him, and he went from never Trump to pro-Trump and pro-MAGA in order to be sellable as the winner of the fake election in 2022. And then he was named the running mate in a fake campaign in 2024. Tony Fabrizio. Well, okay, let's go through this. Andy Sarabian and wow, just losing the page completely. And Jai Chabria, both of whom played lead roles in the strategies of those two campaigns, will join Ramaswamy's effort. So are these Peter Thiel's political guys? Chabria, a longtime Republican operative in Ohio, will be the campaign's general consultant. Sarabian, a veteran of Trump's earlier races who consulted on Senator Bernie Moreno's successful campaign last year in Ohio, is a senior political advisor to Donald Trump Jr. He'll oversee right? Andy, yes. Will oversee an outside political organization aligned with Ramaswamy. Fabrizio, the pollster from Vance's 2022 Senate bid, who has worked on Trump's campaigns, is also on board, as is Arthur Schwartz, a close ally of Vance and Trump Jr. Ramaswamy's team will also include veterans from the high command of his 2024 presidential run. This is Ramaswamy's. Ben Yoho, Michael Biundo, and Chris Grant. And here's what to watch for. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost last week declared his candidacy for the GOP nomination and has tapped Justin Clark, a veteran of Trump's campaigns, as a general consultant. Another Republican state treasurer, Robert Sprague, has said he plans to enter the race soon. And so maybe this is the normie establishment Republican. This Dave Yost, we're going to have to check on his status. And then down here, they have to remind us that a source familiar with Ramaswamy's thinking made sure to let NBC News know that Ramaswamy is leaving on good terms with Trump, Elon and the team. Is that true? Well, it's true according to Ramaswamy. Let me see if Trump endorsed. Let me ask the machine if Trump endorsed Dave Yost. Hold for processing. The machine wants me to know that it believes I'm asking about whether he's endorsed Dave Yost for governor. Let's see. That'll be the indication whether Trump supports Yost in some way or Yost presents as the obviously MAGA candidate. Donald Trump's probably going to endorse whoever is slated to win the fake election, assuming we're still going through with the nonsense of elections at that point. So, but that's something to watch for, to see where the Dave Yost support goes. So JD Vance's team is now going to be working with JD Vance's best friend, Vivek Ramaswamy, so that Vivek Ramaswamy, the guy who is now the face of H-1B visas, can attempt to win Rust Belt state, Ohio, the most important Republican state in the Rust Belt, we've been told, right? Because Pennsylvania and Michigan, and Wisconsin, they're purple states. No, they're not. They're all red states. But Ohio has been very consistently Republican for a decade. It's been a while since they were a swing state, a purple state for Barack Obama. That's very interesting. Vivek Ramaswamy, unless he becomes full MAGA with Trump's full and overwhelming endorsement, could never actually win a real election in Ohio at this point. Vivek Ramaswamy is kind of a joke at this point. Real good indicator, though. Real good indicator. And I know it bothers people. I'm really sorry about that. I wish that I could cheerlead with the rest of them, and I'm not trying to separate myself in any way. Somebody's got to play the opposite side of these things, man. If nobody's going to question JD Vance for 4 years because he's just next to Trump the whole time. And so he's the anointed one. We all grovel before him. We say, oh, JD Vance, you're going to be our next president. This is so great. We're going to get 4 years of Trump and then 8 years of JD Vance. Why would I sign up for 8 years of JD Vance right now? Why would anyone do that? That's like the fastest route back to going to sleep forever and to bringing on everything we just fought to oppose. And I'm not saying JD Vance represents that. I'm saying this sort of thinking that says, well, he's okay because this other guy seems to think he's okay. And therefore, because it's way less work and I can just agree with the consensus, it won't be my fault if we were wrong because everyone thought it. Somebody's got to be voicing that in public. And I know that some of you agree with me and might on whatever platforms you kind of disseminate information on, and that's wonderful. But if I'm going to be the biggest voice saying it, if no voice of even my small stature is saying it, well, then I'm going to do it. And I think that we have to be looking at all these people. I don't see anything that JD Vance has ever done to give me any confidence that he is authentic, even in his basic nature. Okay. He seems to me like the Barack Obama of the based and red-pilled uniparty right. Oh, we're totally defeating woke. Same thing as Ron DeSantis. Imagine Ron DeSantis was the president and JD was the vice president, or vice versa. They would have both ridden in there on their 2022 MAGA wave, right? Or not MAGA wave, but because Trump would have been out of the picture. Remember what they said to us after the 2022 midterms. Why did we lose MAGA candidates? Donald Trump lost us those midterms. You know where we did really well? In those red states, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Greg Abbott, Brian Kemp, Ron DeSantis. Fake elections, all three states. I've lived in Texas. Elections are fake in Texas. They're run on machines. The machines are a joke. Just like California, it's no different. It's no different. How can it be different? It's only different in branding because you're branding to different people. And the same thing is true in Georgia and Florida. And until that's different, until we have real elections, why would you just give the benefit of the doubt to people who could make a difference and don't. I never understand it. I really, really don't understand it. And I wish I could cheerlead, but someone's got to say it. Someone's got to say it. He is going everywhere that Trump goes to be the public-facing, regime-facing, normie-facing Trump alternative. But he is not a Trump alternative. Well, he's certainly not Trump. Ron DeSantis was the Trump light version of Donald Trump. Glenn Youngkin is the Trump light version of Mitt Romney. Nikki Haley is the Trump light version of Kamala. Vivek Ramaswamy is the Trump light version of Barack Obama. You can have it in whatever variety you like. Everybody's going to pitch a more populist narrative. Everyone. AOC is the Trump light version of Bernie Sanders, whatever. You can just keep the thing going because all of the different political brands that the regime attempts us to sell or attempts to sell us, apologies, are going to be represented because they have to be represented. There's a market demand for that specific thing, so it must be sold to people. A Yale guy who's good looking and well-spoken and young and seems like a strapping kind of dude. Well, all the guys who are still listening to Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro are going to think that that's super manly. Oh, yeah, bro, talk about testosterone. It's so weird how these, like the guys who talk constantly about alpha males online, like the Mike Cernoviches of the world and all the dudes in like still in the alt-right manosphere. Like, I get it, okay. You got to be a man. You don't have to be a neutered liberal man. And trust me, I have spent my life around many of those people and used to be one for a while. Expressing those political beliefs, catering, like adjusting the things that you will say and believe and act out based on all the liberals around you because you're trying to fit into their cultural system. There's still all those guys out there professing the alpha maleness, most of them in the mainstream, are doing the same thing. They're trying to impress those liberals and trying to signal. And JD Vance is the same kind of signaler. He's signaling the same things to the same kinds of people. And he likes to tease and tickle fight his liberal friends. And so people see themselves reflected in JD Vance, and the guys are very gay about it. And the women are, I guess, I don't know, confused. And obviously I'm not talking to my audience here, although probably some of you. But the JD Vance thing is the gayest thing I've ever seen. It's nuts. Let's move on. So this is a story that intersects a bit, and maybe we'll just kind of touch on this today and go through a couple things, and then I'll try to wrap up soon. I can't believe how long my show has gotten now that I'm reducing the number of days, but this does give me an opportunity to focus on some other things that are important in terms of writing and whatnot, and allows me a little more space to kind of think things over and helps the understanding without reducing the amount of content. So if everybody's able to get through it all, I don't know what to tell you. This is from Bloomberg today. What is China's DeepSeek and why is it freaking out the AI world? DeepSeek, a Chinese startup that's just over a year old, has stirred awe and consternation in Silicon Valley after demonstrating breakthrough artificial intelligence models that offer comparable performance to the world's best chatbots at seemingly a fraction of the cost. DeepSeek's emergence may offer a counterpoint to the widespread belief that the future of AI will require ever-increasing amounts of power and energy to develop. And as soon as you hear that, the ever-increasing amounts of power and energy, that is a direct connection to Bitcoin. Understand that immediately, because Bitcoin is going to be the massive driver of the power and energy need, which is why they build the Bitcoin mining facilities right next to the power plants. Okay. I talk about this a lot. AI partly as code language. This is the part that's code language, and we got to recognize it every time we see it. If they're trying to scaremonger about power and energy consumption, like they were with the Green New Deal, it's probably about Bitcoin. AI is a secondary concern. Global tech stocks tumbled in late January as hype around DeepSeek's innovation snowballed and investors began to digest the implications for its US-based rivals and their hardware suppliers. Okay, so the tech stocks are dropping. All this money for these AI projects, and now someone's going to get in and just destroy the whole market by giving it all away for free? No, it can't be. Not just 5 days after Donald Trump brought these globalist tech bros into the White House to explain how they're going to give $1 billion, zillion, trillion for AI infrastructure. What's that money going to do? Is it going to be drained and redeployed to Bitcoin infrastructure? Is it all just fake and it's going to go poof because there is no money and it just needs to be drained? I think it's going to go to the Bitcoin infrastructure, but it might not go to any of it. But whatever it is, a $500+ billion investment into AI infrastructure, if AI actually doesn't cost as much as they said and is being now given away for free so it can be developed, well, what's the $500 billion going to mean? All that investment money that goes into these projects, seems like maybe there's something wrong with that. They must have known that it's possible, at least, for this thing to become free for everybody. And how is it that it's becoming free at the same time as these uncensored AIs are beginning to propagate? Like, I just got onto the beta test over the weekend of uncensored.ai. Some of it's very interesting. Some of it is just as retarded as the other AIs. It's uncensored about some things, gives really dumb answers about other things. It's in beta. I'm very hopeful about its development. We'll see what happens. But if trillions upon trillions of dollars have been flooded into this AI development market, and it has been, and they've all been invested, and they have been, and then there's this DeepSeek thing coming out at the same time as uncensored AI, Gab AI, Grok 3, the TikTok thing getting resolved. And the TikTok thing is where all the data is. Well, that's an Oracle. Who runs Oracle? Larry Ellison does. Okay. So all those all of a sudden are worth far less than they used to be, which means money just gets drained out of the market. Whose money is in the market getting drained? Unfortunately, there's going to be some retail investors in there. That's the unfortunate side of it. But it also might be big tech investors. It also means that one system of control is being destroyed and the things being released into the wild. So we're going to scaremonger about China. We're going to scaremonger about power and energy. We're going to scaremonger about tech stocks and investments. And then we're going to scaremonger about the Chinese Communist Party, the possession of data, and what this AI might spit out as answers. Oh, it's going to be Chinese propaganda. And people are like, oh, Tiananmen Square and the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Okay, so cool. Did they tell us the truth about Tiananmen Square? Wasn't that the event that started the whole globalist intertwining with China, that made China all this money, that made them a superpower that would eventually replace the United States of America? Wasn't that the incident that was kind of like the inciting incident of that whole period, while George H.W. Bush, one of the greatest villains in globalism's history, is opening up the United States to China to enrich them? So is there any way that the history could be wrong about that event? And here's the thing about the whole Uyghur thing in Xinjiang. There's also a global regime terrorist organization operating in that part of the world, much like there's that cartel operating down in, what was it? Oh yeah, El Salvador, the place that everybody loves because their cartels are being rounded up and then confined in, I mean, they're not concentration camps, right? They're just prisons or holding facilities. You know, if their ideology doesn't align, because I mean, a prison and a holding facility is for the people who are committing crimes where the ideology doesn't align. It's like the terrorism thing. Whereas concentration camps are where prisoners are put when the ideology does align with the global regime. So in Xinjiang, there are concentration camps. And to be fair, I've made the case before that they are concentration camps. I believe that that case is incorrect now. I don't know that I'm right about that, but I tend to think that that's the situation because it's clear that if you research it, the global regime is attempting to take Xinjiang the way they would take Hong Kong or Taiwan or Ukraine or Israel or Guyana or any of these other little proxy states that they carve out for themselves out of these larger superpowers. And so if you have that element and you have the terrorist element there in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs, you got to at least give it some weight in your calculations. So the idea that China isn't or should never put that out to the world, knowing what the global regime's worldwide media, propaganda media, disseminates to the world about Donald Trump's regime and administration and supporters, why can't that be true of Vladimir Putin and his supporters and the Russian people? Well, of course, we've found out over the last few years it is true. Can it be true about Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia? Yup, turns out. Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, yes. Lil Kim, Little Rocket Man, up in North Korea? Yeah, it seems to be the case because it turns out South Korea is one of those regime proxy states too. So can it also be China? I'd say, yeah, maybe it can be. DeepSeek was founded in 2023 by Liang Wenfeng, the chief of AI-driven quant hedge fund High Flyer. The company develops AI models that are open source, meaning the developer community at large can inspect and improve the software. Its mobile app surged to the top of the iPhone download charts in the US after its release in early January. The app distinguishes itself from other chatbots like OpenAI's ChatGPT by articulating its reasoning before delivering a response to a prompt. The company claims its R1 release offers performance on par with OpenAI's latest and has granted license for individuals interested in developing chatbots using the technology to build on it. Now, what's the important thing here? What does the open in OpenAI mean? Well, it means open source, like DeepSeek is. So we've talked about Facebook has a parallel created in Russia by Pavel Durov, the creator of Telegram. It's called VK. And Facebook has WhatsApp. And Durov has Telegram. And those are the same apps, except Telegram's way better. And then we have Snapchat. And you got the Chinese version called TikTok. And you have OpenAI that was supposed to be open source. And you got the Chinese version called DeepSeek that actually is open source. And so it gets all the scaremonger. People would be like, why are you saying okay things about the Chinese Communist Party? Well, what is the Chinese Communist Party? China was a one-party state. What is the American Uniparty? America is a one-party state. So if Donald Trump is a Republican, is he part of the Uniparty or not? And are the people who are helping Donald Trump defeat the Uniparty, are they Uniparty members as well because they're Republicans? And in 10 years, when this distinction becomes absolutely obvious to everyone, should we be mad at Trump and his allies in the quote unquote Republican Party as they help defeat the Uniparty and make the Uniparty obvious to everyone? I would suggest the answer is no. And if the answer is no, then we have to look at the parallel across the Pacific Ocean in the same way. This isn't a pro-China take. It is a, we need to leave this question open as reality begins to emerge before us. I am not content to decide my position on issues like this on the basis of what the mainstream media has told me about how awful the Chinese Communist Party is. Because I don't believe the Chinese Communist Party is what it used to be, just like I don't believe the American Uniparty is what it used to be, just like I don't believe Vladimir Putin and the Russian people are what we've been told throughout our entire lives. So sorry, when you tell me that China has released an open sourced AI, like OpenAI was supposed to be, And Elon Musk is going to war with the OpenAI guy in public. The OpenAI guy was in Trump's office saying, please take my money, Mr. President. Let us build our AI infrastructure everywhere. Last week. What are you supposed to think? Though not fully detailed by the company, the cost of training and developing DeepSeek's models appears to be only a fraction of what's required for OpenAI or Meta Platform Incorporated's best products. The much better efficiency of the model puts into question the need for vast expenditures of capital to acquire the latest and most powerful AI accelerators from the likes of NVIDIA Corp. That also amplifies attention on U.S. export curbs of such advanced semiconductors to China, which were intended to prevent a breakthrough of the sort that DeepSeek appears to represent. So I guess a lot of our problems are being solved just by the release of this thing into the wild. And all those people with all this money in the future of technology sound like they're about to be really badly hurt by this potentially. Are those going to be mom and pop investors? Maybe it's going to be some of them, not primarily. Does it sound like the technocracy is breaking down completely? I would say that yes. Yes, it does. Washington has banned the export of high-end technologies like GPU semiconductors to China. Cool. Let's decouple. Let's make our own stuff here. In a bid to stall the country's advances in AI, the key frontier in the U.S.-China contest for tech supremacy. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just fine. But maybe having the same thing released worldwide, open source, so that everyone can make their own version and it's all decentralized and you can't turn off the internet so people can keep connecting and there's no central hubs that can cut any of it off. Maybe it means that there is no contest between nation states for supremacy, at least not on these grounds. It nullifies the existential threat rather than commercializes it, which is what they did by keeping it an existential threat along the lines, by the way, of pandemics, which are fake, and nukes, which are definitely real. Definitely real. I mean, you got to be a conspiracy theorist to even consider otherwise. They lie about some existential threats, but not all of them. Not all of them. You can't say it's all of them or you're a conspiracy theorist. But DeepSeek's progress suggests Chinese AI engineers have worked their way around the restrictions, focusing on greater efficiency with limited resources. Are they smarter than us? Why don't we hire them all on H-1B visas? While it remains unclear how much advanced AI training hardware DeepSeek has had access to, the company's demonstrated enough to suggest the trade restrictions have not been entirely effective in stymieing China's progress. Well, here's the thing. The fact that parallel technologies to all our social media and tech apps here in the United States already exist in our superpower adversarial nations means that they were given away. Could be from evil twin to evil twin, or could be from good twin to good twin. Now, if it's evil twin to evil twin, which it seems like all our technology has been under the control of the global evil twin and the evil twin in individual countries, to whatever extent that's true, it's been stripped from them. And we saw that with the Twitter thing. And maybe that's all for show. Maybe the good twin has possessed it the whole time, and it's an evil twin narrative layer of control over all of it. I'm open to that possibility. But if not, then whatever tech they gave to the global evil twin has been seized everywhere. And rather than having it permanently under their control and commercialized for profit, despite it being something that should be free, like the water, like electricity and energy, coming. Well, now it's not commercialized anymore. Now it's decentralized. And maybe there are levels of control, but it's not that top-down global level of control that everyone fears the most. And as long as people are able to exit systems and exit places, then if your society isn't what you want it to be, and there's another one that you would prefer, well, as long as that society will bring you in of their own volition because you provide a benefit to them in some way, then just move. The most democratic thing you could ever do. When did DeepSeek spark global interest? Born in Guangdong, Chinese landscape. Implications for the global AI marketplace. Here we are. DeepSeek's success may push OpenAI and other U.S. providers to lower their pricing to maintain their established lead. It also calls into question the vast spending by companies like Meta and Microsoft, each of which has committed to CapEx of $65 billion or more this year, largely on AI infrastructure, if more efficient models can compete with a much smaller outlay. All of these corrupt tech organizations run by these oligarchs that censored us and have done all the rest of it, controlled markets, etc., probably facilitated human trafficking in their back channels. Sounds like they're all getting screwed. Sounds like they're all going to zero against this technology. Already, developers around the world are experimenting with DeepSeek's software and looking to build tools with it that could quicken the adoption of advanced AI reasoning models while also potentially touching off additional concern about the need for guardrails. So that's amazing. So they're like all other Chinese models. Let me just finish with this. DeepSeek self-censors on topics deemed sensitive in China. It deflects queries about the Tiananmen Square protests or geopolitically fraught questions, such as the possibility of China invading Taiwan. In tests, the DeepSeek bot is capable of giving detailed responses about political figures like Narendra Modi, but declines to do so about Xi Jinping. So that is the malign political influence angle on why DeepSeek is very, very bad. Now, I don't know or care if DeepSeek is very, very bad or very, very good. I'm not going to bother analyzing it on any of these levels because they don't matter. Okay. If you get bad information, get better information. If you only have access to bad information and unreliable information, as we do, then you need to understand that and figure out how to operate in a no trust, no reliable information environment. And that's what we try to do on this show. And in general, with our lives. How do we live productive lives where we can be good people, take care of the people around us, take care of ourselves, take care of our community if we have the ability, take care of our state if we have the ability? How do we do all of these things? Maintaining our sovereignty, looking out for our states. Sorry, I got distracted and thrown off track there for a second. I was trying to pull up these. Oh, goodness. My computer is being a pain in the arse right now. See that? I didn't curse right there. Would never want to be a pain in the arse, you see. I would also never want to be Irish. I'm just kidding. I love the Irish. I really do love the Irish. I have very good friends that are Irish. And also, arse is a funny word. To us here, you know, us, we uneducated Americans. Okay, so now we are opening this. I hope we are opening it. There we are. Sorry about the holding for processing. We are almost wrapped here. I'm going to do this and then we'll get out of here for the day. And I hope and hope with all my might that there isn't an entirely new world of information tomorrow so that all I ever do is 3-hour episodes forever. It's not ideal. Can I say it's not ideal? And I don't mean for myself. I mean, it's fine for me. I'm going to be here and working on these issues and thinking about them and paying attention to stuff like I always would. But, man, oh man. 3 hours. It's a little ridiculous. Just spend all day with Chris Paul. That's my new show. All right. So Elon Musk highlighted these posts today on X, formerly Twitter. And he said that this is the best analysis of the situation on the internet. Now, I posted today. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Elon Musk is rugging the tech bros He's not rugging MAGA and Donald Trump, right? He's making these people, he's showing these people for exactly who they are, just like Donald Trump does. And I just saw some Rumble rants come in. So before we go to this, I'm going to hit this. Dan Medlin says, $5 says, thanks, moderator. Thank you. Michelle the Bean, $20. Thanks for the reality TV episode recap and for all our favorite TV characters today. And unicorns have been reported to be following JD Vance around, but he denies it, says it is just Vivek. You make a great point, Michelle. Vivek might be the unicorn. PJ Corrigan says we need to add some dong to this TV show. We're not going to do that. So this is Gavin Baker. Gavin Baker is Elon Musk says that he is giving the best analysis on the internet of this here issue. I'm going to zoom that a little bit so people can see it. DeepSeek R1 is real with important nuances. Most important is the fact that R1 is so much cheaper and more efficient to inference than O1, not from the $6 million training figure. R1 costs 93%. And to be clear, I don't understand all of the AI jargon that you're going to hear in this. I think the point he's making is understandable outside of the AI jargon. So if you want to get back to the jargon, I encourage you to do that on your own. Just pop into into Perplexity or whatever else. What is inference? What is R1 versus O1? What is 1 gigabyte of RAM in FP8? Okay. RAM, by the way, is random access memory. It's how much the system's able to deal with at once. R1 costs 93% less to use than O1 per each API, can be run locally on a high-end network station, and does not seem to have hit any rate limits, which is wild. So he's meaning that if you have a good computer at home, you could actually just do this yourself. And it sounds so much like a Bitcoin node. It just does. Okay. They're decentralizing AI. They're decentralizing social media. They're decentralizing Bitcoin. They're going to decentralize power, production, storage, and transmission. All of it's going to be decentralized on a parallel information, communications, energy, security infrastructure. All that is software. All of that is what the tech bros have built. Okay. There are the tech bros running down that train. That train is speeding ahead. We're all going to know that that's the train. The tech bros, the scientific materialists, the globalists, they're speeding down the left side of that train, of those tracks, trying to jump on that train. They're going to rob the train. Trump, MAGA, America First, sovereign nationalists worldwide are running down the right side. They're going to jump on the train. They're going to rob that train. And whichever side defeats the other while robbing that train is going to win and going to control this. It still can go one way or another. The election was not the end of the game. As I said, for many, many, many months before the election, it is wonderful to have this advantage, especially in the communications area, in the info war area. It is information dominance at this point. But the problem is we still don't know who our enemies are. And a lot of people are in denial because they want our enemies to be our friends. And this is a very spiritual thing ultimately, because the enemy is the enemy. They're not your friend. And maybe someday they will see that what they're doing is wrong and what their enemies are doing is right. And they'll come over. But until then, they're just enemies. All right. And, some of these people are, and I'm not saying because they're enemies, we need to kill them. I'm saying we need to understand that while they might want to do certain things with us, their purpose is not helping us. Okay. Their purpose is to take our power for themselves. That's what makes them the enemy. In that respect, they are indistinguishable from the people who are obviously our enemy. And it turns out that they are controlled opposition of that enemy. And they're actually pursuing more interests and more important interests with our obvious enemy as their controlled opposition in the uniparty. That is the thing that must be defeated in the train. And when we hit that train, the technologists and the globalists and the climate change people and all the wokest communists you ever imagined are going to be joined with the uniparty right again against us. Okay. That's what's happening on the train. They might even be riding down the right side of the canyon with us and jumping on the train with us and wearing our uniform. But when it comes down to it, they're siding with the people on the other side because that's their controlled opposition. That's their social class and culture. It is what it is. That's scientific materialism for you. There's a solution to that, but they don't want the solution. Batching massively lower costs and more compute increases tokens per second, so still advantages to inference in the cloud. Would also note that there are true geopolitical dynamics at play here, and I don't think it's a coincidence that this came out right after Stargate. RIP, $500 billion. We hardly even knew you. Last week, people freaking out. All that money for AI, it's going to go into vaccines and everybody's going to have to get injections. What does any of that mean now? Zero. It also meant zero then. And now he's doing a white power hand gesture. I'm doing a zero. It's zero. Is that better? Zero. Oh, now they'll be like, he just did the Freemason eye thing. I'm screwing myself. Oh man, that's hilarious. So $500 billion, we hardly knew you. Obviously, it's no coincidence coming out right after Stargate, as I just mentioned. And why did Trump do that? Because he knew this was coming this week. So he had them come down. He showed them off in his trophy case. Who said that? Me. Who else said that? My dad, Steve Bannon. People are like, it can't be true. These are our friends because Trump says they're good. It doesn't matter if Trump stands them up there and says, oh, we've got this great relationship. Hey, tell him about what you're going to do with your amazing little toys that you've created. He's just doing what he's got to do. And he's doing it brilliantly. I genuinely think people are like, it's an insult to Trump to not trust him. No. What's an insult is not understanding what Trump is doing and trusting all his enemies, no matter how hard he tries to show you that they're enemies. That's got to be the insulting thing. Not trying to actually wake up so that we can ever move forward has got to be the insulting thing, if you ask me. But I know I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm very, very mean. Real. Number one, it is and was the number one download in the relevant App Store category. Obviously ahead of ChatGPT, something neither Gemini nor Claude was able to accomplish. So other rival AI models from major companies were not able to defeat OpenAI. It is comparable, number two, to O1 from a quality perspective, although lags O3. So it's good, but not the best. Okay. Number three, there were real algorithmic breakthroughs that led to it being dramatically more efficient, both to train and inference. Training in FP8, MLA, and multi-token prediction are significant. Okay, cool. Is that happening right now? Is this innovation happening right now? Or did it happen a long time ago? Or did it happen because OpenAI and DeepSeek simply separated like this? Or one was a clone of the other, and who knows which direction? But one of them wasn't censored. Is it the Chinese one that wasn't censored? Is it the Chinese one that doesn't have the garbage in, garbage out problem given to us by our media and by the fact that we all believe our media, and then we will reproduce the central narrative to feed in as new garbage to these systems? Could be either. Number four, it is easy to verify that the R1 training run only cost $6 million. While this is literally true, it is also deeply misleading. Number five, even their hardware architecture is novel, and I will note that they use PCI Express for scale-up. Did all this just happen, or was this part of the original plan and design? And are we just seeing all of that play out as it was always going to and always supposed to? Nuance. The $6 million does not include costs associated with prior research and ablation experiments on architectures, algorithms, and data per the technical paper. Quote, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? And that's kind of, an old phrase, a cliche, and what do they call it? An idiom. That they've said so many bad things. The bad thing is so obvious. That's what we just said. But if you put the bad thing aside, what's it like? This means that it is possible to train an R1 quality model with a $6 million run if A lab has already spent hundreds of millions of dollars on prior research and has access to much larger clusters. DeepSeek obviously has way more than 2048 H800s. Look those up if you want. One of their earlier papers referenced a cluster of 10,000 A100s. An equivalently smart team can't just spin up a 2,000 GPU cluster and train R1 from scratch with $6 million. Roughly 20% of NVIDIA's revenue goes through Singapore. Interesting. 20% of NVIDIA's GPUs are probably not in Singapore, despite their best efforts. There was a lot of distillation, i.e., it is unlikely they could have trained this without unhindered access to GPT-4o and o1. As AltCap pointed out to me yesterday, kind of funny to restrict access to leading-edge GPUs and not do anything about China's ability to distill leading-edge American models. Obviously defeats the purpose of the export restrictions. Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? Okay, and there's just a bit more of this. Oh, sorry, no, I just chose the same one. Let's go here. Make sure I'm doing the right one. There we are. Conclusions. 1, lowering costs to train will increase the return on investment on AI. 2, there is no world where this is positive for training CapEx or the power theme in the near term. 3, the biggest risk to the current AI infrastructure winners across tech, industrials, utilities, and energy is that a distilled version of R1 can be run locally at the edge on a high-end workstation. Someone referenced a Mac Studio Pro. That's like $5,000 or something. That means that a similar model will run on a superphone in circa 2 years because of how quickly that technology advances. And so it's like what used to take a massive computer now exists in the palm of your hand. That means that a similar model if inference moves to the edge because it is good enough, we are living in a very different world with different winners, i.e. the biggest PC and smartphone upgrade cycle we have ever seen. Oh, wow. What about Elon's Tesla phone that he has hinted at for years? Compute has oscillated between centralization and decentralization for a long time. Which one's going to win? ASI is really, really close, and no one really knows that's artificial superintelligence. What the economic returns to superintelligence will be. If a $100 billion reasoning model trained on 100,000 plus Blackwells, O5, Gemini 3, Grok 4, jargon again, sorry, is curing cancer and inventing warp drives, then returns to ASI will be really high and training CapEx and power consumption will steadily grow. Now that sounds like nonsense to me, but I guess we'll see. Dyson spheres will be back to being best explanation for Fermi's paradox. Again, it's probably drifting into the nonsense realm there and AI theoretical stuff that is very scientific materialist. We'll see how the future goes. I hope the returns to ASI are high. Would be so awesome. So obviously a tech optimist here. This is all really good for the companies that use AI software, internet, etc. 6, from an economic perspective, this massively increases the value of distribution and unique data, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. 7, American labs are likely to stop releasing their leading edge models to prevent the distillation that was so essential to R1, although the cat may already be entirely out of the bag on this front, i.e. R1 may be enough to train R2, etc. And you have to think that that's probably likely. If the thing has gotten out into the wild and it is able to be decentralized and people begin, like tech geniuses at home or just people who experiment until they know what they're doing, begin to play with these AIs and train them in decentralized fashion, who knows what could happen? What happens when AIs are trained on Q research? I thought maybe one of these top-down AIs, one of these AIs that's already set up, would be trained on Q research, but maybe all sorts of AIs are going to be trained on Q research. How long is it going to take someone to start their own node of DeepSeek and train it on Q research? You got to wonder. And then what happens? So we'll, I think, leave it there for today. There's all sorts of stuff coming in about data centers and Elon Musk talking blockchain and Sam Altman, but we'll leave that for another time. Maybe we'll get to some of that later this week. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm relatively caught up here with the chat before I say goodbye. There's no more Rumble rants for the day. I don't think I'm going to catch up on the conversation fast enough. So with that, I am going to bid you adieu. I will be back on Wednesday for the subscriber stream. We're going to do 6 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. So I'll put that post out on Substack. That stream will be for paid Substack subscribers. Maybe I'll do an extra one this week. I already sent out a Substack. I'm going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's my plan. If there's an extra one, I'm going to put that up on Truth Social and on Telegram. And so if you are subscribed on Rumble at I Am Your Moderator, same thing on YouTube. You'll just see those live streams pop up. But otherwise, look for them on Truth Social and Telegram. I'm Your Moderator on Truth Social. t.me/veryreasonable to find me on Telegram. So 6 p.m. subscriber stream. If you want to join that, Q&A is on Substack. Subscribe on Substack. That's where paid subscribers gain access to the Wednesday subscriber stream. I will be back on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, Friday at the same reasonable time on the Same Reasonable Podcast Network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden will never be president and was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
You down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What must be what?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com. And for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon down on the range.